Hello everyone, I'm the Dream Teller and I'm here to help you today. I know you use this video to fall asleep, so before that, like the video and subscribe to the channel. Also, where are you from and what time are you watching? Now get comfortable and relax. The first night I noticed the lights flickering, I blamed the building's old wiring. That's what you do when you're trying to convince yourself that a cheap one-bedroom apartment in a rundown complex is actually a fresh start. 3 weeks after Sarah walked out, this was all I could afford, and I wasn't about to let some electrical issues make me regret my decision. I sat on my second-hand couch that Tuesday evening, staring at the TV screen as it blinked off and on every few minutes. The overhead light followed the same pattern. My coffee maker in the kitchen clicked and whirred to life even though I hadn't touched it since morning. I got up and unplugged it, my bare feet sticking slightly to the linoleum floor. The apartment was small enough that I could see every room from where I stood. The cramped living room with its single window, the kitchenette with its peeling countertops, and through the open door, my bedroom with its bare mattress on the floor. I hadn't bothered buying a frame yet. The bathroom door stayed closed. I hated the way the mirror reflected the entire apartment behind me when I brushed my teeth. That first night, I just went to bed early. I pulled my thin blanket up to my chin and listened to the usual sounds of the building settling. The walls creaked, the pipes knocked, someone's TV played muffled through the ceiling. Normal stuff. Around 3 a.m., I woke up to the sound of footsteps in the hallway outside my apartment. Heavy, deliberate steps that stopped right at my door. I held my breath and waited. The steps moved away, and as they did, my bedside lamp turned on by itself. I yanked the cord from the wall. The next day at work, I couldn't focus on my computer screen. My eyes kept closing, and my coworker Jeff asked if I was hungover. I just nodded. Easier than explaining that I'd spent the rest of the night sitting up in bed, watching my phone charge indicator blink on and off even after I'd unplugged it. That evening, I checked the circuit breaker box in the hallway. All the switches looked normal. I knocked on my neighbor's door, Unit 2B, right next to mine, to ask if they were having similar problems. No one answered. I'd never seen anyone go in or out of that apartment. I called my landlord, but he just grunted and said he'd send an electrician when he could. I didn't push it. The rent was cheap and I needed to save money. Sarah had taken half of our savings when she left, saying she needed it for the deposit on her new place. I couldn't argue. Her name had been on the account too. The pattern continued for the next few days. During daylight hours, everything worked normally. But as soon as the sun set, the electronics would start their dance. The TV would switch channels on its own. My laptop would wake from sleep mode, the screen casting blue light across the room. The microwave would start and stop, its display flashing random numbers. I started unplugging everything before bed, but it didn't matter. The overhead lights, which I couldn't disconnect without removing the fixtures, still flickered. My phone, which I needed for my morning alarm, would light up with no notifications. The digital clock on my nightstand would reset itself to midnight over and over. And always, there were the footsteps. They came at different times each night, but they followed the same pattern. They would start at the far end of the hallway, moving slowly toward my door. They sounded like someone wearing heavy boots, though the carpet should have muffled any footsteps. When they reached my door, they would stop and something in my apartment would turn on. A light, an appliance, anything with electricity running through it. I started tracking the incidents in a notebook. Time, date, which devices acted up, how long the footsteps lasted. I'm not normally this organized, but I needed to prove to myself that I wasn't imagining things. The entries filled pages. 10:42 p.m. TV turned on to static. Footsteps lasted 45 seconds. 2:17 a.m. All lights flickered for 3 minutes. Footsteps stopped at door twice. 11:03 p.m. Microwave ran for 2 minutes empty. Footsteps dragged longer than usual. After a week, I couldn't take it anymore. I hadn't slept more than 2 hours at a stretch. Dark circles had formed under my eyes and my hands shook when I tried to type at work. I decided to stay up all night and confront whoever was walking the halls. I positioned myself in my living room chair facing the door. I had a baseball bat beside me. Not that I planned to use it, but it made me feel better. I'd drunk enough coffee to keep a college student awake during finals week. My phone's camera was ready to record. The first few hours passed slowly. I heard the usual building noises, doors closing, water running, the hum of the heating system. Normal apartment stuff. I started to feel stupid for sitting there with a bat. Maybe I really was losing it. Sarah had accused me of that near the end, said I was too paranoid, too clingy. "You see problems where there aren't any," she'd said while packing her books into boxes. At 2:43 a.m., the footsteps started. They came from the far end of the hall, just like always. Heavy, measured steps, boot heels on carpet. I gripped the bat tighter and stood up. The steps got closer. My overhead light began to flicker. I pressed my eye to the peephole, but the hallway was dark. The footsteps reached my door and stopped. The TV behind me turned on, filling the room with white noise. I yanked the door open. The hallway was empty, but the footsteps continued, behind me now, inside my apartment. I spun around. The TV's static cast shifting shadows on the walls. My coffee maker started brewing by itself. The microwave display blinked rapidly, but I couldn't see anyone. The steps moved across my living room, heavy boots on my thin carpet. I backed against the wall, still holding the bat. The footsteps reached my bedroom door, and every light in the apartment went out at once. I fumbled for my phone, turned on the flashlight. The beam cut through the darkness, showing empty rooms. But I could hear someone breathing. Not me. My breath was coming in quick gasps. This was slower, deeper, coming from the corner of my living room. My hands shook as I pointed the phone's light toward the sound. The beam flickered and died. In the darkness, I heard the footsteps moving toward me. I ran, out the door, down the hall, taking the stairs two at a time until I burst into the parking lot. I sat in my car until sunrise, watching my apartment windows. The lights kept turning on and off until dawn. When daylight came, I went back up. Everything was exactly as I'd left it, except all the electronics were unplugged, even the ones I knew I hadn't touched. On my kitchen counter, my coffee maker had made a full pot, the coffee still hot. I called in sick to work and spent the morning searching online for similar experiences. I found nothing helpful, just ghost stories and conspiracy theories. I checked my building's history, but it was only 20 years old. No deaths, no mysterious disappearances. That afternoon, I went to the leasing office. The manager, a tired-looking woman named Rita, was surprised to see me. "We don't get many complaints from 2A, she said, shuffling through a filing cabinet. "What about 2B? I asked. "Have they reported any electrical issues?" She frowned. "2B? That unit's been empty for months. We can't seem to keep tenants there." My stomach dropped. "Empty? But I hear noises." "Probably just the walls settling," she said. "It's an old building." But it wasn't just settling. That night I set up my phone to record the hallway while I tried to sleep at a friend's place. When I checked the footage the next morning, there was nothing to see, just an empty corridor. But the audio picked up the footsteps, clear as day, and something else. The sound of keys jingling like someone trying to unlock a door. I spent the next few days researching the building's electrical system. I learned about electromagnetic fields, power surges, and electrical interference. None of it explained what was happening in my apartment. The lack of sleep started affecting my work. I missed deadlines, dozed off during meetings. My boss called me into his office to ask if everything was okay. I couldn't tell him that I was afraid to go home at night, that I spent hours watching my door, waiting for footsteps that shouldn't exist. After 2 weeks of this, I broke down and called Sarah. She answered on the 4th ring. "What do you want?" she asked, her voice tired. "I need to ask you something," I said. "When we were together, did you ever notice anything strange? Electrical problems? Weird noises?" She was quiet for a moment. "Is this about the new apartment? Just answer the question." "No," she said. "Nothing strange. But you always found something to worry about, didn't you?" I hung up. She was right. I had always been the anxious one in our relationship. Always checking the locks, worrying about burglars, imagining worst-case scenarios. But this was different. This was real. That night I decided to try something new. When the footsteps started, I didn't hide or run. I sat in my living room and spoke out loud. "I know you're there," I said to the empty apartment. "What do you want?" The footsteps stopped. The TV turned on, switched to a news channel, then off again. My laptop opened a blank document. "Are you trying to communicate?" The lights flickered. Once, twice, 3 times. My phone opened to its calculator app displaying numbers. 2B. I stood up slowly. "You're from next door?" The footsteps moved toward my bedroom. I followed, my heart pounding. They led me to my bedroom window, which looked out over the parking lot. A car I'd never seen before was parked in the spot marked 2B, an old model covered in dust. The next morning, I asked Rita about the car. She checked her records. "Oh, that spot," she said. "It belongs to the last tenant of 2B. He left all his stuff when he moved out, including the car. We've been trying to contact him, but his phone's disconnected." "What was his name?" "Let me see. Thomas Chen. Worked nights at some factory. Quiet guy. Always paid his rent on time. Then one day he just disappeared. Left everything behind." I spent my lunch break researching Thomas Chen. I found his social media profiles, inactive for months. His last post was about starting a new job at a power plant outside the city. I called the plant, but they had no record of him ever working there. That evening, I knocked on the door of 2B. No answer, of course. But when I pressed my ear to the door, I heard something. A faint humming, like electrical equipment running. The footsteps came again that night, but this time they were different. Faster, more urgent. They paced between my apartment and 2B, back and forth, back and forth. Every electronic device I owned went crazy, turning on and off, displaying random numbers and letters. I followed the sound to my bedroom window again. The car was still there, covered in months of dust. But now there was something else. A faint blue light coming from inside it. I went down to the parking lot. The car was locked, but through the grimy windows I could see the dashboard lights blinking in a pattern. The same pattern as the footsteps. Long, short, long, short. Morse code. I ran back upstairs and grabbed my phone, pulled up a Morse code translator. For hours I sat in my apartment, recording the pattern of flickering lights. When I finally decoded it, my hands were shaking. Trapped. The next day, I went to the police. They took a missing persons report but didn't seem concerned. Adults have the right to disappear, they said. I told them about the electrical problems, the footsteps, the Morse code. They suggested I contact my landlord about the wiring, but I knew what I had to do. That night when the footsteps started, I was ready. I had a plan. I set up every electronic device I owned in a circle in my living room. Laptop, phone, TV, radio, even my old digital camera. I turned them all on and waited. The footsteps came right on schedule. As they crossed my threshold, every screen lit up with static. I stood in the center of my electronic circle and spoke. "Thomas Chen," I said clearly. "I know you're here. I know you're trapped. Tell me how to help." The static on every screen shifted, formed patterns. Numbers appeared across different devices, coordinates, an address, the power plant where he'd supposedly worked. I spent the next week investigating. The power plant was abandoned now, shut down months ago after an accident. The official report mentioned an electrical surge, equipment failure, no casualties. But in the basement, behind a locked door marked high voltage, I found Thomas Chen's employee ID card. It was scorched around the edges. I brought it back to the apartment. That night, when the footsteps came, I held up the card. "I found this," I said to the empty room. "What happened to you?" The lights flickered more slowly now. My devices displayed a series of images. Security camera footage from the plant. Thomas working late. A power surge. A door that wouldn't open. He wasn't dead. The police had confirmed that no bodies were found at the plant. But he wasn't fully here either. The surge had done something to him. turned him into whatever was walking my halls at night. I spent another week researching electrical phenomena, quantum physics, theories about energy and consciousness. I learned about electromagnetic fields strong enough to affect human brainwaves, about consciousness as a form of electrical activity. Finally, I understood what I had to do. I set up my apartment like before, with every device running. But this time, I added extension cords, power strips, anything that could carry electricity. I created a web of power running through my apartment and into 2B through the shared wall outlet. When the footsteps came, I turned everything on at once. The power surge made the lights in the whole building dim. Static filled every screen. The footsteps stopped at my door. I opened it. Thomas Chen stood there, not a ghost, not a spirit, but a man made of flickering light and electrical interference. He looked at me, nodded once, and walked past me into my apartment. Every device surged with power. The lights blazed so bright I had to shield my eyes. When I could see again, Thomas was gone. But this time, the footsteps didn't come back. The next day, his car was gone from the parking lot. Rita said it had been towed, but she couldn't tell me where. The police found Thomas 2 days later, alive but confused, in a hospital 50 miles away. He had no memory of the past few months. I still live in apartment 2A. The electronics work normally now. The hallway is quiet at night. Sometimes when I'm falling asleep, I think I hear footsteps, but they're just the building settling. Normal apartment stuff. But I keep one power strip unplugged just in case. And every now and then when I pass 2B, I swear I can hear the faint hum of electricity behind the door. The first time I saw the mannequin, I laughed. Standing there in the back of the bedroom closet, draped in cobwebs, it looked ridiculous, like something a previous tenant had forgotten. I even gave it a little wave as I unpacked my clothes. 3 weeks later, I wasn't laughing anymore. And after what happened last night, I'm packing my bags and getting the hell out of here. I'd moved to Portland for a job in tech, and the rental market was brutal. When I finally found this little 1940s bungalow at a reasonable price, I jumped on it. The landlord, Mrs. Chen, seemed nice enough during the walkthrough. She mentioned the house had been empty for a few months, but didn't say why the last tenant left. I didn't ask. The place needed some work. Peeling wallpaper in the hallway, a dripping faucet in the bathroom. The usual older home issues. But it was in a quiet neighborhood, had hardwood floors, and most importantly, I could afford it. I signed the lease that day. Moving in was straightforward. The house came partially furnished, which helped since I didn't own much beyond my clothes, laptop, and books. The bedroom had a decent-sized closet. That's where I found it. The mannequin was about my height, made of that old-school papier-mâché or whatever they used back then. Its surface was cream-colored and slightly rough, like sandpaper. No features on its face, just smooth curves where eyes and mouth should be. Its arms hung at its sides, fingers slightly curved. It wore nothing but a fine layer of dust. I considered calling Mrs. Chen about it, but it seemed like too small a thing to bother her with. I figured I'd just move it to the garage later. For now, I pushed it to the back corner of the closet and hung my shirts in front of it. The first week went fine. I settled into my new job, explored the neighborhood, found a decent coffee shop. The house had its quirks, creaking floorboards, windows that stuck, but nothing major. I barely noticed the mannequin behind my clothes. Then things started getting weird. I first noticed it on a Tuesday morning, 10 days after moving in. I was picking out a shirt for work and something felt off. The mannequin had shifted position slightly. Its right arm, which had been straight at its side, was now bent at the elbow. Just a few degrees, but enough that I noticed. I figured I must have bumped it while getting clothes. 2 days later, its head was tilted to the left. Not much, maybe 15 degrees, but I was sure it had been straight before. I spent 10 minutes that morning examining the base, looking for signs of instability that might make it lean. The base was solid. I straightened the head and went to work. When I came home, the head was tilted again. That's when I started taking photos. One each morning, one each night when I got home from work. I kept them in a folder on my phone labeled, "I'm not crazy." The changes were subtle but undeniable. The left hand slowly curling into a fist, the right foot rotating outward, the torso twisting slightly to the right. Each movement was small, but they added up. I showed the photos to my coworker Jim over lunch. He laughed and suggested the floor might be uneven, or maybe the mannequin was just old and settling. "Or you've got ghosts, man," he said, wiggling his fingers at me. I forced a laugh and changed the subject. That night, I took extra sleeping pills. I'd been having trouble sleeping, jumping at every house noise. The pills helped. I slept deeply until 3:17 a.m., when a loud thud from the closet jolted me awake. I lay there in the dark, heart pounding. The sound had been clear, something heavy hitting the floor. I reached for my phone, turning on the flashlight. The closet door was closed. I was sure I'd left it open. I got out of bed slowly, my bare feet silent on the cold hardwood. I approached the closet, phone extended. My hand shook as I reached for the doorknob. I counted to 3 in my head, then yanked the door open. The mannequin had fallen forward. It lay face down among my scattered shoes, one arm stretched toward my bed. I stood there for a long time, flashlight beam fixed on its outstretched hand. Eventually, I closed the door and wedged a chair under the handle. I called Mrs. Chen first thing in the morning. The conversation didn't go well. "What do you mean, a mannequin?" she asked. "In the bedroom closet. It's been there since I moved in. I assumed it belonged to the previous tenant." A long pause. "There was no mannequin when we cleaned the house. Are you sure you didn't bring it?" "I'm looking at it right now. It's definitely been here the whole time." Another pause. "I'll send someone to remove it." "Thank you, when?" "Next week maybe, I'm very busy." I hung up and looked at the mannequin. I'd propped it back up in the corner, but something was different. It took me a moment to realize what had changed. Its head was now turned to face directly at me. I decided to remove it myself. I grabbed it firmly around the waist, planning to carry it to the garage. The surface felt wrong under my hands, warmer than it should be, with a slight give to it, like pressing into firm clay. I dropped it immediately. It hit the floor with another loud thud, but didn't break or crack. I called in sick to work and spent the day researching storage units. I found one a few miles away and paid for a month. That afternoon, I wrapped the mannequin in old blankets and wrestled it into my car's trunk. The storage facility manager gave me an odd look as I carried the wrapped shape to my unit, but didn't comment. I felt better that night. I actually managed to eat dinner and watch some TV. Around midnight, I headed to bed, relieved to have dealt with the situation. The relief didn't last long. The first thing I noticed was the closet door standing open. I always closed it now, out of habit. The second thing I noticed was the smell, musty and organic like wet paper. The third thing I noticed was the mannequin, standing exactly where it had been before. I backed out of the bedroom. My hands were shaking so badly I dropped my phone twice trying to call Jim. When he finally answered, his voice was groggy with sleep. "I need you to come over," I said. "What? It's midnight, man. Please, I need someone else to see this." He must have heard something in my voice because he agreed. While I waited, I sat in the living room, keeping the bedroom door in view. 20 minutes later, his car pulled up. "This better be good," he said as I let him in. I led him to the bedroom without speaking. The closet was empty. "I don't understand," I said, pushing hangers aside. "It was right here. Right here." Jim rubbed his eyes. "Maybe you dreamed it?" No, I was awake. It was here when I came to bed. I swear." "Look," he said, "you've been stressed about the move, the new job. Maybe you should talk to someone." I showed him the photos on my phone. He looked through them carefully. "These could be the same mannequin in different positions," he said gently. "Or different mannequins. There's no way to tell it's moving on its own." "I know what I saw." He patted my shoulder. "Get some sleep, okay? Call me if you need anything." After he left, I did a thorough search of the house. No mannequin. I checked outside too, walking around the house with my phone's flashlight. Nothing. Finally exhausted, I returned to my bedroom. I didn't sleep. I sat in bed with all the lights on, alternating between watching the closet and checking my phone. Around 4 a.m. I got up to use the bathroom. When I returned, the mannequin was standing beside my bed. I froze in the doorway. It stood perfectly still, but something was different about its surface. The cream-colored material looked softer, more organic, like skin that had been underwater too long. Its hands were fully formed now, with defined knuckles and fingernails. The smooth face had developed subtle contours, the suggestion of cheekbones, a slight ridge where eyebrows should be. I backed away slowly. It didn't move. I made it to the front door, grabbed my car keys, and left. I drove aimlessly until sunrise. Now I'm sitting in a coffee shop writing this all down. My hands have finally stopped shaking enough to type. In a few minutes, I'm going to call Mrs. Chen and tell her I'm breaking the lease. I'll pay whatever penalty she wants. Then I'm going to book a hotel room. Tomorrow, I'll start looking for a new place to live. I keep thinking about the storage unit. I should go check it, make sure the mannequin is still there. But I know it won't be. The blankets will be there, neatly folded. The unit will be empty otherwise. My phone buzzes, a text from Mrs. Chen. Previous tenant asked about mannequin. Says it belonged to shop that closed in 1950s. Previous owner used to make custom forms for wealthy clients. All special orders, very expensive. Some say too lifelike. Shop closed after owner disappeared. Need to discuss. I turn off my phone. I don't want to discuss anything. I don't want to know anymore. I just want to get my essential belongings from the house and leave. I can buy new clothes, new books, new everything. But first, I need to delete those photos from my phone. I don't want to see them again, especially not the last one I took this morning, just before I fled the house. The one that shows the mannequin's face, where the smooth surface has split into a line that could almost be a smile. I know it's still in the house, waiting. Maybe in the closet again, or maybe standing by my empty bed. But it's patient. It has all the time in the world. And somewhere, beneath that slowly changing surface, it knows I'll have to come back eventually. At least to get my laptop. I never wanted to touch that damn board. The moment Sarah pulled it out of her desk drawer at the office party, something in my gut told me to leave. But after 3 beers and constant prodding from my co-workers, I gave in. That was 4 days ago. Now I'm sitting in my dark living room at 3 a.m. jumping at every creak and snap in the walls, and my phone won't stop buzzing with texts from Mike saying something's in his house. I should have trusted my instincts that night. The party was winding down at Sarah's place. Most people had already left, and only 5 of us remained. Sarah, Mike, Jennifer, David, and me. We'd been drinking and sharing work stories when Sarah mentioned she had a Ouija board. "Come on, it'll be fun," Sarah said, setting up the board on her coffee table. "Don't be such a baby, James." I shifted uncomfortably on her couch. "I don't mess with that stuff. My grandmother always said it was dangerous." "It's just a piece of cardboard from Hasbro," David laughed, already placing his fingers on the planchette. "What's the worst that could happen?" The worst, as it turns out, was about to begin. We gathered around the board, all 5 of us touching the plastic planchette with our fingertips. The room felt colder suddenly, but I blamed it on Sarah's overactive air conditioning. The only light came from a table lamp in the corner, casting long shadows across the board. "Is anyone there?" Sarah asked in a theatrical voice. Nothing happened for several seconds. Then the planchette started to move. My first instinct was that someone was pushing it, but I could feel the resistance under my fingers as it glided across the board. "Yes." "What's your name?" Jennifer asked. The planchette moved again, spelling out, "Watching." "Watching what?" Mike asked, his voice slightly unsteady. "You." My stomach clenched. "Maybe we should stop." "No way," Sarah said. "This is just getting good. Spirit, why are you watching us?" Waiting for what? David asked. Open, the temperature seemed to drop another few degrees. I could see my breath now, forming small clouds in the dim light. I'm done, I announced, pulling my fingers away from the planchette. This isn't funny anymore. Don't break the circle, Sarah hissed, but it was too late. The planchette flew off the board, hitting the wall with a crack. The table lamp flickered and went out, plunging us into darkness. Someone screamed. I think it was Jennifer. When Sarah finally found her phone and turned on the flashlight, the Ouija board had 3 long scratches across its surface. We all left quickly after that. I blamed the wine and beer for what happened, told myself it was just someone messing around. But when I got home that night, things started happening. First, it was small stuff. My keys weren't where I left them. The TV turned on by itself in the middle of the night. The bathroom door would be closed when I distinctly remembered leaving it open. I told myself I was being paranoid, that the Ouija session had just spooked me, but then things escalated. Last night, I woke up to all my kitchen cabinets standing wide open, every single one. I know I closed them before going to bed. My coffee maker turned on by itself at 2 a.m., brewing nothing but steaming hot water that spilled across the counter. The radio in my bedroom started playing static at full volume, even though it wasn't plugged in. I barely slept last night, and today at work was a nightmare. I couldn't focus, kept nodding off at my desk. Sarah wouldn't look at me, and Jennifer called in sick. David acted like nothing had happened, but I noticed his hands shaking when he poured his coffee. Then Mike called an hour ago, his voice trembling. James, something's wrong. Something's in my house. What do you mean? I can hear footsteps upstairs, heavy ones, but I live alone, man. And there's scratching in the walls. It started right after the session. At first I thought it was just my imagination, but tonight I saw something. What did you see? My throat felt dry as sandpaper. A shadow, but it wasn't normal. It moved against the light like it was solid, and I swear it was watching me, just like the board said. James, I think we let something out. That's impossible. It was just a game, right? Then explain why my furniture keeps moving. Every time I leave a room and come back, everything's shifted slightly. My couch was 3 feet from where I left it. My dining room chairs were all stacked on the table. And the scratches, they're appearing everywhere. On the walls, the floors, even my bedroom door. I heard a crash in the background, followed by Mike's sharp intake of breath. Oh God. James, I have to go. It's here. The line went dead. That was 20 minutes ago. Mike's been texting nonstop since then, saying he's barricaded himself in his bathroom. The thing, whatever it is trying to get in. He can hear it scratching at the door. I'm not safe either. As I sit here writing this, I can hear movement in my kitchen. The sound of drawers opening and closing, footsteps on the tile floor. But I know I'm alone in the house, or at least I should be. The temperature keeps dropping. My breath comes out in white puffs now, just like it did during the session. The scratching has started in my walls too, getting louder and closer. My phone buzzes again. Another text from Mike. It's in the house. Can't stay in bathroom. Running to car. Meet at Sarah's. Need to end this. I grab my keys and jacket, hoping I can make it to my car before whatever's in my house finds me. The scratching follows me down the hallway, getting faster and more frenzied. Something heavy thuds behind me as I reach for the front door. I don't look back. I can't look back. I know what I'll see if I do. That solid shadow Mike described. The thing that's been watching us since we opened the door between worlds with that stupid board game. My car starts on the first try, thank God. As I pull out of my driveway, I see movement in my living room window. A dark shape, darker than the night around it, presses against the glass. It has no features I can make out, but I know it's watching me leave. I call Sarah while driving, my hands shaking so badly I almost dropped the phone. She answers on the first ring. James, are you okay? Mike's coming to your place. Something's happening. That thing from the board. I know, she interrupts. Jennifer just called me. She's seeing things too. David's already here. We need to finish what we started. What do you mean? We broke the circle, James. We didn't say goodbye. We need to close the door we opened. I push my speed up to 70, running a red light. In my rearview mirror, I see something moving in the back seat, just a flicker of shadow, but it's enough to make my heart stop for a second. How do we close it? I still have the board. We need everyone who was there. We need to end the session properly. It's the only way to send it back. And if we can't? Sarah's voice drops to a whisper. Then it stays. And it keeps watching, waiting, until it decides to do more than just watch. I hear a door slam in the background of Sarah's call, followed by running footsteps. Mike just got here, she says. Hurry, James, it's getting stronger. I'm 5 minutes from Sarah's house now. The shadow in my back seat is more solid, more present. I can feel it watching me, just like the board said it would. The air in the car is freezing. My phone buzzes with a text from Jennifer. Almost there. Don't start without me. We're going to try to fix this, to close whatever door we opened with our stupid, drunken mistake. But as I pull up to Sarah's house and see the dark shapes moving in her windows, I wonder if it's already too late. The 5 of us are about to face whatever we let into our world. We have to end this. We have to say goodbye properly. Because if we don't, that thing will keep watching, keep waiting, and eventually, it will do more than just move furniture and scratch walls. I park my car and run to Sarah's front door, not looking back at the shadow I know is following me. We started this together and we'll end it together. Sarah opens the door before I can knock. Her face is pale, her hands trembling. Everyone's here. The board's ready. I step inside, and the door closes behind me with a soft click. The shadows in the corners of Sarah's living room seem deeper than they should be, more alive. Mike sits on the couch, his clothes disheveled, eyes wild. Jennifer paces by the window, jumping at every sound. David stands in the corner, trying to look calm but failing. The Ouija board sits on the coffee table, the 3 scratches from our first session still visible on its surface. The planchette waits in the center, seeming to gleam in the dim light. Everyone sit, Sarah commands. We need to do this right. We gather around the board just like before, but this time there's no laughter, no skepticism. We know what we're dealing with now. We know it's real. The moment our fingers touch the planchette, the temperature plunges. The shadows in the room grow darker, more substantial. They seem to pulse with a life of their own. We need to speak to the spirit we contacted before, Sarah says, her voice steady despite her fear. The planchette moves immediately, faster than before. We're here to say goodbye, Sarah continues. We're closing this session. Watching waiting open, the planchette spells out rapidly. No, Sarah says firmly. You need to go back. We're ending this. The shadows in the room converge, forming shapes that move against the laws of light and darkness. The scratching starts in all 4 walls simultaneously, a desperate, angry sound. No, stay open, waiting. We break this connection, Sarah says loudly. We close this door. You are not welcome here. The planchette fights against our fingers, trying to spell more words, but Sarah's voice grows stronger. This session is ended. This connection is severed. Go back to your world and leave us in peace. The scratching reaches a fevered pitch. Pictures fall from walls. A vase shatters spontaneously. The shadows writhe and twist, taking forms that hurt my eyes to look at. Goodbye, Sarah shouts, and we all join her, our voices unified in that single word. The planchette goes still. The scratching stops. The shadows retreat to their normal corners, lifeless and ordinary once again. The temperature slowly begins to rise. We sit in silence for several minutes, not daring to move our fingers from the planchette. Finally, Sarah speaks softly. We can let go now. It's done. We remove our hands slowly, carefully. Nothing happens. No flying planchette, no scratches appearing, no shadows moving against the light. Did it work? Jennifer whispers. I think so, Sarah says. She picks up the board and planchette. I'm burning these tomorrow. Good, Mike says, standing on shaky legs. I never want to see another Ouija board as long as I live. We leave Sarah's house one by one, each of us checking over our shoulders, but the shadows stay where they belong. The night feels normal again, just darkness, nothing more. When I get home, my house is exactly as I left it. No open cabinets, no scratches on the walls, no movement in the corners of my vision. The temperature is normal. My belongings stay where I put them. It's been 3 days since we closed the session properly. Nothing strange has happened since that night. No moving furniture, no scratching in the walls, no shadows that move against the light. We don't talk about what happened, but sometimes at work I catch Sarah's eye, or Mike's, or Jennifer's, and I know we're all thinking the same thing. We were lucky. We managed to close the door we accidentally opened, but none of us will ever forget what it felt like to be watched by something from the other side, to be waited for, to know that sometimes when you reach out to the darkness reaches back. I've thrown away every board game I own, just to be safe. Some doors are better left unopened, some games aren't worth playing, and some things should stay on their side of whatever barrier separates our world from theirs. The only reminder of our experience is a single text message thread between the 5 of us, created the day after we closed the session. It contains just one message from Sarah: never again. We all replied with the same word: agreed, and that's how it will stay. The first shadow moved 3 weeks after I started renovating my childhood home. I was replacing old floorboards in the attic when I noticed it, a dark shape against the wall that didn't match any object in the room. I turned my head quickly, and it stopped. But I had seen it, and that changed everything. I inherited the house from my parents after they moved to Florida for retirement. It's a Victorian-style home in western Massachusetts, built in 1890. The kind of place that needs constant maintenance. My father had let it decline over the last decade, and now at 42, I found myself taking a 6-month leave from my accounting job to restore it. The work started normally enough. I repaired the sagging front porch, replaced rotted window frames, and fixed leaks in the roof. Basic stuff. The attic was last on my list. Just some new floorboards and insulation. Nothing complicated. The day I first noticed something wrong, I was measuring boards near the attic's west wall. My work light cast shadows from stacked boxes and old furniture onto the slanted ceiling. But one shadow didn't line up with anything. It looked like a tall, thin rectangle, maybe 4 feet high. I walked around the attic trying to find what was casting it. Nothing matched its shape or position. I told myself it was just a trick of the light. Old houses have weird angles. The shadows probably came from something outside the window. But when I looked again, the rectangular shadow had shifted slightly to the left, even though nothing in the room had moved. My hands got sweaty. The temperature in the attic dropped about 10 degrees. I backed away slowly, keeping my eyes on that shadow. It didn't move again, but I still left the attic quickly, my heart pounding against my ribs. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about that shadow, trying to explain it logically. Maybe it was exhaustion from working 12-hour days. Maybe the dust in the attic was affecting my vision. But deep down, I knew what I had seen. The next morning, I forced myself to go back up there. Daylight streamed through the small window, creating normal, predictable shadows. I worked steadily, ripping up old boards and laying new ones. Hours passed. Nothing weird happened. Just as I was starting to relax, a cloud passed over the sun. The attic dimmed, and in that moment I saw 3 distinct shadows on the wall, but only 2 boxes casting them. My throat went dry. The extra shadow was smaller this time, about the size of a basketball. As I watched, it slowly stretched upward, growing taller and thinner. The shape reminded me of someone standing up from a crouched position. I dropped my hammer. It hit the floor with a loud thud. The shadow jerked at the sound, then quickly shrank back to its original size. My legs felt weak. Sweat ran down my back despite the cool air. I left the attic again, slamming the door behind me. That night, I searched online for information about shadow phenomena, ghost stories, optical illusions, anything that might explain what I was seeing. I found plenty of supernatural theories, but nothing scientific or credible. The next few days, I worked only in the downstairs rooms. I told myself I was just prioritizing the more important repairs. But every time I passed the attic stairs, my stomach tightened. I could feel the door up there, like it was watching me. A week passed. The rest of the house was nearly finished, and I was running out of excuses to avoid the attic. The incomplete work up there was preventing me from closing out the contractor permits. I had to go back. I chose a bright morning, bringing every work light I owned. I set them up to eliminate as many natural shadows as possible. The attic was hot and stuffy under the artificial lighting. I worked quickly, trying to stay focused on the task at hand. 2 hours in, one of the work lights flickered and went out. I looked up from hammering and my blood went cold. A cluster of shadows had gathered in the corner where the light failed. They moved like ink drops in water, merging and separating. None of them matched any objects in the room. I watched, paralyzed, as one shadow detached from the group. It slid across the wall, maintaining the shape of a person's profile. Not walking, gliding. When it reached the midpoint of the wall, it stopped. Then it turned, and I swear it faced me, though it had no features, no eyes. My chest constricted. I couldn't breathe. The shadow stayed perfectly still, oriented in my direction. The air pressure in the attic changed, making my ears pop. The remaining work lights dimmed slightly. Then the shadow moved again, faster this time, sliding toward me along the wall. I scrambled backward, knocking over my toolbox. The sound of scattering tools was deafening in the enclosed space. The shadow recoiled from the noise, retreating to its cluster in the corner. I ran downstairs and didn't stop until I reached my car. I drove to the nearest hardware store and bought motion sensors, more lights, and security cameras. I spent the rest of the day installing them throughout the house, focusing on the attic. If something was moving up there, I wanted proof. The cameras recorded nothing unusual for the first 2 nights. On the third night, at 2:47 a.m., every motion sensor in the attic triggered simultaneously. The security footage showed only darkness. The infrared lights on the cameras had failed. When I checked the attic the next morning, nothing was disturbed, but the air felt different, heavier. The shadows in the corners seemed darker, more solid. One of them rippled when I walked past like a curtain in a breeze, but there was no wind in the attic. I called a local paranormal investigation team. They seemed professional and brought scientific equipment, EMF meters, thermal cameras, audio recorders. They spent a full night in the attic. Their equipment malfunctioned constantly. Batteries drained in minutes. Digital displays showed random numbers. The lead investigator said she had never seen such consistent technical failures. But they did record something. In one infrared video clip, a dark mass moved independently across the frame. The investigator tried to enhance the footage, but the file corrupted every time she opened it. After 3 attempts, her laptop crashed and wouldn't restart. The team advised me to document everything, but warned me not to interact with the shadows. They said they'd research similar cases and get back to me. I'm still waiting for their call. I tried to resume work in the attic, but the shadow activity increased. They moved more frequently, more boldly. Sometimes I heard soft scraping sounds, like something being dragged across the floor, but nothing ever actually moved. One shadow grew large enough to cover an entire wall. Another formed into a perfect circle and rolled across the ceiling. 2 shadows merged into a shape that reminded me of wings spreading. Each incident left me shaking, pulse racing, hands so unsteady I couldn't hold my tools. I hired contractors to finish the attic work. They complained about equipment problems, drills that wouldn't work, levels that showed impossible readings. 3 different crews quit before the job was done. Each one had a different excuse, but they all mentioned feeling watched. The final crew completed the repairs, but they worked only in the morning when the sun was brightest. They installed extra windows to let in more natural light, which seemed to reduce the shadow activity. But it didn't stop it completely. Now the attic is technically finished, but I never go up there. I keep the door locked. Sometimes at night I hear the motion sensors beeping. The security cameras still malfunction, but occasionally they capture brief images of shadows moving without cause. I've thought about selling the house, but I can't bring myself to do it. This was my childhood home. My parents lived here for 30 years without incident. Why are the shadows active now? What changed? The paranormal investigator suggested the renovation might have disturbed something dormant in the house. They mentioned other cases where construction activated supernatural phenomena, but they had no explanation for why it manifested as living shadows. Last week I noticed something new. The shadows are seeping under the attic door. Just thin lines of darkness barely visible against the hallway floor. But they extend a little further each day, like fingers reaching down the stairs. I've started sleeping in hotels. I only come to the house during daylight hours. The shadows seem stronger at night, more purposeful in their movements. During the day they retreat to the attic corners, visible but mostly still. Yesterday, I installed a steel security door at the bottom of the attic stairs. The contractor thought I was crazy, but he didn't argue when I doubled his fee. The door has 3 deadbolts and a magnetic seal. So far, no shadows have penetrated it. But every morning, I check the security footage from the night before. The cameras still malfunction, but sometimes for a few frames they show something. The shadows are gathering, forming larger shapes. They move with more coordination, more intelligence. I don't know what they want. They haven't tried to harm me. They actually seem to avoid direct contact, retreating when I get too close. But their movements have purpose. They're exploring, testing boundaries, learning. The rational part of my brain still tries to explain them away. Light tricks, stress hallucinations, overactive imagination. But I know what I've seen. The shadows in my attic are alive and they're growing stronger. For now, they're contained. The new door holds. The extra windows keep them weakened during the day. I've learned to live with the motion sensor alerts, the corrupted video files, the constant feeling of being watched from above. But sometimes, late at night when I'm lying in my hotel room, I wonder, what happens when the shadows decide they're tired of staying in the attic? What happens when they figure out they can flatten themselves enough to slip through any crack, any seam? I keep the hotel room bright, every light burning. But even here, I catch myself staring at the shadows in the corners, watching for movement, waiting to see if they've followed me, wondering if somewhere in the darkness they're watching back. The renovation is complete now, at least on paper. The permits are closed. The contractors are paid. The house looks beautiful from the outside. But inside, above the new security door, something waits. The shadows gather and shift, testing their limits, growing bolder. I don't know what to do next. I can't stay in hotels forever. I can't sell the house, not knowing what's up there. For now, I maintain my routine. Check the cameras. Replace burned-out lights. Watch the shadows under the attic door. And every day I tell myself the same thing. As long as they stay up there, as long as the door holds, everything will be fine. But deep down, in the darkest corners of my mind, I know the truth. The shadows are patient. They have all the time in the world. And sooner or later, they'll find a way out. I used to love running at dusk. Used to. Now I can't even look at Liberty Park without my hands shaking and my stomach turning. The doctors say I'm fine physically, but they don't understand. They weren't there. They didn't see what I saw. They didn't feel what I felt. But I need to tell this story. I need someone to know what happened that evening 3 weeks ago. It was October 12th, a Tuesday. The weather had finally cooled down enough to make evening runs pleasant again. The sun was setting earlier now, around 6:30 p.m., and I had just finished a particularly stressful day at the accounting firm. I needed to clear my head, so I changed into my running gear, black shorts, my favorite moisture-wicking shirt, and the new running shoes I'd bought last month. I parked my car in the usual spot near the east entrance of Liberty Park. The parking lot was half empty, normal for that time of day. A couple was walking their golden retriever near the playground. An old man sat on a bench reading a newspaper. Everything seemed perfectly ordinary. I started my usual route, the outer loop that circles the park twice, about 4 miles total. The first lap went smoothly. My breathing fell into its familiar rhythm, and my muscles warmed up nicely. The tension from work started melting away with each step on the gravel path. The sky turned orange, then deep red, as the sun sank behind the trees. I was halfway through my second lap when I first noticed it. Something seemed off about the large oak tree near the pond. I slowed my pace, my shoes crunching on the gravel. There was a figure standing there, completely motionless, facing the tree. At first, I thought it was just another park visitor, maybe a bird watcher or someone taking photos of the sunset. But something felt wrong. The figure was tall, probably 6.5 feet, wearing what looked like a dark gray suit. It stood unnaturally still like a statue. Its arms hung straight down at its sides, not moving at all. Not even slightly. People don't stand that still. They shift their weight, scratch an itch, check their phone. This figure did nothing. I stopped running completely about 30 feet away from it. My breath came out in white puffs in the cooling air. Sweat ran down my back, but I felt cold. Really cold. The kind of cold that starts in your gut and spreads outward. "Hey," I called out. "You okay there?" No response, no movement, just that rigid stillness. I took a step closer, though everything in my body screamed at me not to. "Sir?" Or, "Ma'am, is everything all right?" The figure's head turned, not its body, just its head, rotating slowly toward me like a security camera. Too slowly, too smoothly. When it faced me fully, I saw what wasn't there. It had no face. Where features should have been, there was just smooth, pale skin. No eyes. No nose, no mouth. Nothing. Just a blank oval of flesh. My legs went numb. My mouth dried up instantly. I stood there, frozen, staring at this impossible thing. It didn't move. I didn't move. We just existed in that moment, locked in some horrible standoff. Then my survival instincts kicked in. I turned and ran. Not just my usual running pace, I sprinted like I'd never sprinted before. My feet pounded the gravel path as I rushed toward the parking lot. My lungs burned. My heart felt like it would explode. After about 50 yards, I glanced back over my shoulder. The figure was gone. The oak tree stood alone in the growing darkness. I slowed slightly, gasping for air, my legs shaking. That's when I saw it again. It stood on the path ahead of me, maybe 20 feet away. Same rigid posture, same faceless head, same dark suit. It was impossible. There was no way it could have gotten ahead of me without me seeing it move. I veered off the path, cutting across the grass toward a different exit. My shoes slipped on the dew-wet grass. I nearly fell but caught myself. Another quick look back. It was gone again. Then it appeared by the playground equipment, standing, waiting. Head turned toward me. I changed direction again, running toward the park's west entrance. My chest felt like it would burst. Spots danced in my vision. I wasn't going to be able to keep sprinting much longer. It appeared by a bench, then near the pond, then by a cluster of trees. Each time I looked, it would be gone, only to appear somewhere else, always facing me, always closer, never moving, except to turn that smooth blank face in my direction. The couple with the golden retriever was gone. The old man with the newspaper was gone. The park was empty except for me and this thing that kept appearing and disappearing, herding me away from the exits, deeper into the park. I reached for my phone, but my hands shook so badly I dropped it. It clattered on the path, the screen cracking. When I looked up, the figure stood 3 feet in front of me. I stumbled backward, falling onto the gravel. The impact scraped my palms raw. Up close, I could see more details I wish I hadn't. Its skin had a waxy, artificial quality. The suit wasn't exactly a suit. It seemed to be part of its body, the same pale, flesh-like material as its head. Its hands were too long, the fingers extending well past where they should end. I scrambled backward on all fours like a crab. The figure didn't move forward. It just stood there, head tilted slightly to one side, as if studying me. The tilting movement was wrong, too mechanical, like a malfunctioning robot. I managed to get to my feet. My legs felt like jelly, but I forced them to move. I ran again, no longer caring about direction. I just needed to get away. The sky had darkened to deep purple. The park lights were coming on, creating pools of yellow light surrounded by growing shadows. It appeared in front of me again. I turned right. It was there. I turned left. There it stood. Each time it disappeared and reappeared, it seemed closer. Each time, that blank face turned to track my movement with the same unsettling smoothness. My foot caught on something, a tree root maybe, and I went down hard. My ankle twisted. Pain shot up my leg. I rolled onto my back, expecting to see the figure standing over me. Nothing. The path was empty. I lay there for several seconds, gasping for air, my ankle throbbing. The park had gone completely silent. No birds, no distant traffic noise, no wind in the trees. Just my ragged breathing and pounding heart. Slowly, carefully, I got to my feet. My ankle supported my weight, but barely. I turned in a complete circle, scanning the growing darkness. No sign of the figure. The nearest park exit was about 200 yards away. I could see my car in the parking lot, now the only vehicle left. I started limping toward the exit, moving as quickly as my injured ankle would allow. Every few steps, I looked around, expecting to see that faceless head turn toward me. But the path remained empty. The silence pressed in around me like a physical thing. I was about 50 yards from the exit when I felt it. A presence behind me. Close. Very close. I didn't want to turn around. Every cell in my body screamed at me not to turn around. But I did. It stood less than a foot away. Its blank face filled my vision. This close, I could see that its flesh had a subtle pattern, like very fine scales or static on an old TV screen. The pattern shifted and moved, though the flesh remained still. That head tilted again, going too far to one side, well past where a human neck could turn. I felt something then. Not a sound or a touch, but a pressure in my mind, like someone pushing against my thoughts. Images flashed through my head, places I'd never been, things I'd never seen, strange geometric shapes that hurt to look at, colors that shouldn't exist. My nose started bleeding. I stumbled backward, nearly falling again. The pressure in my head increased. More images, more impossible colors, more shapes that violated geometry. My vision started to darken around the edges. Then somewhere in the distance, a car horn honked. The sound cut through the silence like a knife. The pressure in my head vanished. I blinked, and the figure was gone. Not like the other times where it disappeared to reappear somewhere else. This time it was just gone. The normal sounds of evening rushed back. Crickets chirping, cars on the distant highway, wind in the trees. I stood there for several minutes, blood dripping from my nose, afraid to move. Finally, I heard voices. A group of teenagers entered the park, laughing and talking loudly. I limped to my car as quickly as I could. My hands shook so badly it took 3 tries to get the key in the ignition. I drove home well above the speed limit, checking my rearview mirror every few seconds. That was 3 weeks ago. I've been to several doctors. They found nothing wrong except a slightly sprained ankle and burst blood vessel in my nose. I've seen 2 therapists. They talk about stress and hallucinations and PTSD. They prescribe medications that don't help. I haven't gone running since then. I don't go out after dark anymore. I've changed my route to work to avoid driving past Liberty Park. I keep seeing movement out of the corner of my eye, but when I turn to look, nothing's there. Sometimes when I'm alone, I feel that pressure starting to build in my head again. I've started bleeding from my nose randomly. Last night I woke up at 3 a.m. My bedroom window faces the street. As I lay there in the dark, I saw something tall and gray standing under the streetlight. It didn't move. It just stood there, head turned toward my window, smooth, blank face catching the yellow light. I closed my curtains. I didn't sleep. I'm writing this now as the sun comes up. I need someone to know what happened. I need someone to believe me, because I know it's not done with me. It's waiting, watching, and sooner or later it's going to come closer than just standing under the streetlight. I don't know what it wants, I don't know what it is, but I know one thing for certain. I'm never running at dusk again. The first sign was a stabbing pain behind my left eye. I thought it was just stress from the move and setting up my new home office. But that pain kept coming back, day after day, always worse when I sat at my desk. I should have known something was wrong when even Buddy, my usually calm German shepherd, refused to enter the room. He'd just stand in the doorway, hackles raised, staring at that damn painting. I found it at Mike's flea market downtown, buried under a stack of dusty frames and water-damaged prints. The price tag read $25, marked down from $75. A steal for what looked like an original oil painting, a landscape of a dense forest at dusk. The trees were dark, almost black against a deep purple sky. Something about the way the branches twisted and reached toward the canvas edge caught my attention. It wasn't exactly beautiful, but it was striking. Perfect for my bare office walls. Interesting choice, the vendor said when I handed over the cash. She was an older woman with thick glasses and arthritic hands. That one's been here a while. Most people pass it by. She hesitated, then added, had a couple try to return it last month. Said it didn't feel right in their house. But all sales are final. I should have paid more attention to her words, but I was too focused on getting my new place set up. After 15 years in the same cramped apartment, I'd finally saved enough for a down payment on a small house. The office was my priority. I work from home as a software developer, and I needed a proper workspace. The painting looked perfect above my desk. The dark colors matched my minimalist decor, and the forest scene added depth to the room. For the first few days, everything was fine. I settled into my routine, coding and taking video calls, occasionally glancing up at my new art piece. Then the headaches started. Small twinges at first, barely noticeable. But they grew stronger, always centered behind my left eye. I'd catch myself rubbing my temples, struggling to focus on my screen. The pain seemed worse in the late afternoon, when the sun hit the painting at certain angles. My productivity started to slip. Code that should have taken hours stretched into days. I'd find myself staring at the painting instead of my monitor, lost in those twisted branches. Sometimes I could swear they moved, just slightly, like they were reaching toward me. But when I blinked or looked closer, everything was static. The tension in the room became unbearable. My shoulders would knot up within minutes of sitting down. The air felt thick, almost pressurized, like the moment before a thunderstorm. I started taking more breaks, working from my laptop in the kitchen instead. Buddy's behavior was the next red flag. He'd always followed me around the house, usually sleeping under my desk while I worked. But now he wouldn't set foot in the office. He'd whine and pace in the hallway if I closed the door. When it was open, he'd stand guard at the threshold, growling softly at the painting. I started having trouble sleeping. My dreams were filled with forests, not the bright sunlit woods where I used to hike, but dense, suffocating thickets of black trees. I'd wake up drenched in sweat, my head pounding. The pain would fade during my morning shower, only to return the moment I sat down at my desk. After 2 weeks, I couldn't take it anymore. I called my doctor and described the symptoms. He suggested it might be eye strain from my monitors or poor posture. I bought a new chair, adjusted my screen height, even got my eyes checked. Nothing helped. The breaking point came during a video call with my biggest client. I was presenting some new features when the pain exploded behind my eye. The room started spinning. I barely managed to end the call before throwing up in my wastebasket. As I sat there, head between my knees, I looked up at the painting. The branches seemed to writhe against the canvas, and I swear I heard something like whispers coming from the frame. I stumbled out of the office and slept on my couch that night. The next morning, I started researching the painting. I took photos and did reverse image searches. I posted on local art forums. Nothing came up. Finally, I went back to Mike's flea market. The older woman wasn't there, but her daughter was manning the stall. When I described the painting and mentioned the headaches, her face went pale. "You bought that thing?" She shook her head. "Mom should have told you about the Reeves family. They bought it last spring, had it for less than a month. The wife started having migraines, severe anxiety. Their dogs wouldn't go near it. They tried to return it, but..." She shrugged. Before them, it was the Patels. Same story. Headaches, tension, pets acting strange. They ended up giving it away for free. That's how we got it. I pressed for more details. She didn't know the painting's origin. It had shown up in a box of donated items. No signature, no documentation. Just that unsettling forest scene that nobody wanted to keep. "If I were you," she said, lowering her voice, "I'd get rid of it, not sell it. That just passes the problem on. Destroy it." I went home and stared at the painting. In the morning light, it looked almost normal. But as I stood there, the pressure started building in my head again. Buddy pressed against my legs, whimpering. I took it down immediately. The moment it left the wall, the air in the room felt lighter. My headache began to fade. I carried it out to my garage and examined it closely for the first time since buying it. The canvas was old, the paint cracking in places. The forest scene was more detailed than I'd realized. Among the twisted branches, I could make out shapes that looked almost like faces or hands reaching out. The longer I looked, the more patterns emerged, until my vision started to blur and the pain returned full force. I wrapped it in thick blankets and drove it to a storage unit across town. I couldn't bring myself to destroy it. Something about burning or cutting up an original painting felt wrong, even one like this. But I needed it out of my house. The change was immediate. My headaches vanished. The tension in my office disappeared. Buddy resumed his spot under my desk. Within days, my productivity returned to normal. I even started sleeping better, though the dreams of dark forests lingered. A month later, curiosity got the better of me. I started digging deeper into the painting's history. I posted on more forums, joined local art groups, even hired a part-time research assistant. We tracked down the previous owners, not just the Reeves and Patels, but 3 other families before them. Each story was the same: headaches, anxiety, pets refusing to enter rooms, a growing sense of dread. One family reported seeing movements in the painting at night. Another claimed they heard whispers coming from it during storms. The trail went cold in 2019. Before that, no one knew where it came from or who painted it. No signature, no gallery stamps, no records of sale. Just a disturbing image that kept circulating through the community, causing problems wherever it went. I visited the storage unit a few times, always with someone else. The effects were weaker there, but still present. A dull ache behind the eyes, a feeling of being watched. The last time I went, I noticed dark stains spreading from behind the frame, like water damage or mold. The forest seemed darker, the branches more twisted. I swear the shapes among them had changed positions. I've stopped paying for the storage unit, let them auction it off when my payment defaults. Maybe it'll end up back at the flea market or in another home. Part of me feels guilty about that, but I tell myself it's better than destroying a potentially valuable piece of art. Besides, the effects seem to vary from person to person. Maybe someone out there can handle it better than I could. My office feels normal now. I've hung a bland landscape print where the painting used to be. Rolling hills, blue sky. Nothing that could hide shapes or shadows. Buddy sleeps peacefully under my desk while I work. The headaches are gone, though sometimes late at night, I still dream of those twisted branches reaching through the darkness. I've learned to trust my instincts and my dogs. Some things just feel wrong, even if we can't explain why. That painting brought something into my home that didn't belong there. I don't know if it was cursed or haunted or just painted with some toxic material that caused hallucinations. I probably never will. But sometimes when I'm working late and the house is quiet, I think about that storage unit. I imagine the painting sitting there in the darkness, wrapped in blankets, waiting. I wonder who will find it next, what stories they'll add to its history. And I hope they realize sooner than I did that some bargains come with hidden costs. I've started checking flea markets and thrift stores regularly, looking for signs of the painting resurfacing. I've never seen it again, but I keep a file of similar cases. Stories of artwork that affects people in strange ways, that seems to carry something more than just paint and canvas. Most are probably urban legends or coincidences, but after my experience, I'm not so quick to dismiss them. The research has become something of an obsession. I've connected with others who've had similar experiences, not just with my painting, but with other pieces. There's a community out there sharing stories and warnings. Some think certain artworks act as conduits for negative energy. Others blame toxic pigments or psychological suggestion. I don't know what to believe anymore. What I do know is this: that painting changed me. Not just through the headaches and fear, but by showing me there are things in this world that defy explanation. Things that can affect us in ways we can't understand or control. I still have the photos I took for my research. Sometimes I look at them, trying to make sense of what happened. The images don't carry the same power as the original. They're just pictures of a slightly creepy painting, but I can't delete them. They're evidence, proof that it wasn't all in my head. Last week, I got an email from someone claiming they'd found the painting at a different storage facility auction. They described the same symptoms: headaches, tension, pets acting strange. I gave them all the information I had, including the histories I'd collected. They decided to donate it to a paranormal research group for study. Part of me hopes they'll find answers. A bigger part hopes they keep it locked away where it can't affect anyone else. I've redecorated my office completely now. Bright colors, abstract prints, nothing that could hide shapes or shadows. The room feels alive in a good way, filled with natural light and positive energy. Buddy has claimed the entire space as his domain, sprawling on the rug and demanding belly rubs during my video calls. Sometimes I catch myself staring at the wall where the painting hung, remembering how those branches seemed to reach toward me. The memory still makes my head throb slightly. But then Buddy will nudge my hand or bark at a squirrel outside, bringing me back to reality. I've learned to appreciate normal, unremarkable art, the kind that just sits quietly on walls, adding color without adding dread. My new rule is simple: if something feels wrong, if it makes my dog nervous, if it gives me headaches, it doesn't belong in my home, no matter how interesting or valuable it might be. The experience has made me more cautious about what I bring into my space. Not just artwork, but everything. I pay attention to how things feel, how they affect my mood and energy. Some might call it superstition. I call it learning from experience. I still go to flea markets and thrift stores. I still buy secondhand art. But now I take my time, trust my instincts, and always watch how Buddy reacts. He's never been wrong about these things. The headaches never returned after I removed the painting. The dreams of dark forests have mostly faded. But I've kept everything I learned about trusting my instincts, about listening when my body or my dog tells me something's wrong. Some lessons are worth the pain they cost to learn. I don't know where the painting is now. Part of me hopes it's been destroyed, that someone finally had the courage to end its journey through our community. But another part knows better. Things like that don't just disappear. They wait, they move on. They find new walls to hang on, and new people to affect. So I keep my file, keep collecting stories, keep watching for signs of its reappearance. Not because I want to find it again, I never want to see that forest scene in person again, but because someone needs to track these things, to warn others, to keep the history alive. Maybe someday someone will solve the mystery of the painting, find its artist, explain its effects, put an end to its journey. Until then, all I can do is share my story and hope it helps others avoid making the same mistakes I did. The sun is setting now, casting long shadows across my office walls. Buddy is snoring softly under my desk, completely at peace. The bland landscape print above my monitor shows its rolling hills and calm sky. Nothing hidden, nothing reaching, Nothing wrong. And that's exactly how I like it. The first time I heard the laughter coming from my antique grandfather clock, I convinced myself it was just a dream. By the fourth night, I knew better. Something was living inside that mahogany case, and it was trying to drive me insane. I'd bought the clock at an estate auction in Burlington, Vermont. The previous owner had died of natural causes at 92, and his family was liquidating everything. The clock stood 7 feet tall, its dark wood polished to a mirror shine, brass pendulum swinging with perfect rhythm. The auctioneer mentioned it was German-made, circa 1885. I won it for $3,200, a steal for a piece that well-preserved. Getting it home was a hassle. The moving company charged extra for the stairs to my second-floor apartment, and it barely fit through the door. But once I had it positioned in my living room, against the wall between my bookcases, it transformed the whole space. The steady tick-tock became the heartbeat of my home. During the day, at least. The first night I jerked awake at exactly 3:15 a.m. A soft giggle echoed through my apartment, high-pitched but definitely adult, like someone trying to stifle their amusement. I lay in bed, heart pounding, convinced a burglar had broken in. But when I crept out with my baseball bat, the apartment was empty. All the windows were locked, the door still chained. The second night, same thing. 3:15 a.m. on the dot. This time the laughter was clearer, still quiet, but distinctly coming from the direction of the living room. I switched on every light in the apartment and spent 30 minutes examining the clock. The case was solid, no hidden compartments. The mechanism worked perfectly. No speakers, no electronics, nothing that could produce sound except the normal ticking. By the third night, I was sleeping on my couch, determined to catch whatever was making the sound. 3:14 a.m. I stared at the clock face, waiting. The second hand swept past 12. 3:15 exactly. The laughter started, soft at first, then building slightly. It was coming from inside the clock case, no question. But when I yanked open the front panel, the sound stopped instantly. Nothing inside but brass weights and gears. I started documenting everything. The laughter always began precisely at 3:15 a.m. and lasted exactly 47 seconds. The tone never varied, always that same suppressed giggle, like someone who knew a secret they were dying to share. The sound didn't show up on recordings, either from my phone or the professional audio equipment I borrowed from work. My neighbors hadn't heard anything. The building superintendent gave me a weird look when I asked if any previous tenants had reported strange sounds. I called the auction house to ask about the clock's history, but they only had the basic details. Purchased new by the deceased owner's grandfather in Munich, passed down through the family. I'm not a superstitious person. I work in IT security. Logic and data are my world. But after 2 weeks of this, I was starting to crack. Sleep deprivation was affecting my work. I'd catch myself nodding off during meetings, then jolt awake in a panic, thinking I'd heard that damned laugh. I tried sleeping at friends' houses, but I'd lie awake all night wondering if the laughter was happening back in my empty apartment. I considered selling the clock, but the thought of that sound haunting some unsuspecting buyer made me feel guilty. Besides, by that point, I needed to know what was causing it. I took a week off work and turned my living room into a research station. I set up infrared cameras, motion sensors, and electromagnetic field detectors. I tracked temperature changes and air pressure fluctuations. During the day, I pored over German clockmaking forums, reaching out to collectors and historians. The only unusual reading came from the EMF meter. Every night at 3:15, it would spike briefly, then return to normal. But EMF spikes can be caused by all sorts of things: old wiring, pipes, even passing vehicles. It wasn't proof of anything. One expert from Bavaria responded to my inquiries. He recognized the maker's mark inside the clock, a small workshop that had operated in Munich's Altstadt neighborhood from 1850 to 1902. The craftsman, Friedrich Weber, was known for his precision mechanisms, but had a reputation for eccentricity. He'd claimed his clocks contained pieces of time itself, and insisted on working alone after midnight. That led me down a rabbit hole of research into Weber's other creations. Most were standard grandfather clocks, but a few had documented irregularities. One reportedly chimed at random intervals despite having no chiming mechanism. Another was said to keep perfect time even when its weights were removed. The stories were probably just legends that had grown around the clockmaker's mysterious personality. But then I found an article from an 1887 Munich newspaper describing Weber's arrest for fraud. He'd been caught stealing hair from barbershop floors and women's brushes, claiming he needed it for his clocks. The charges were eventually dropped. The judge apparently decided he was merely eccentric rather than criminal. But Weber never sold another clock. He died in an asylum in 1903. I became obsessed with the idea that human hair might somehow be incorporated into my clock's mechanism. I spent hours examining every inch of the works with a magnifying glass. The thought should have disgusted me, but by that point I was beyond normal reactions. I just wanted answers. The laughter continued every night, exact as clockwork. I started talking back to it. "What do you want?" I'd ask. "Why are you here?" Sometimes I'd catch myself laughing along, matching its pitch and rhythm. Those moments scared me more than the sound itself. After a month, I noticed changes in my daily routine. I'd find myself standing in front of the clock for long stretches, watching the pendulum swing. The tick-tock seemed to sync with my heartbeat. I'd lose track of time, coming to with a start to realize hours had passed. My friends stopped visiting. They said the apartment felt wrong somehow, though they couldn't explain why. My girlfriend and I broke up after I refused to stay at her place more than one night in a row. I couldn't bear the thought of missing something important at 3:15. I started setting my alarm for 3:10 every night, not trusting myself to wake up naturally anymore. I kept detailed notes of each laughing episode, measuring the volume and duration with scientific precision. The sound never changed, but I convinced myself I could hear subtle variations, sometimes mocking, sometimes inviting, sometimes almost sad. The clock's timekeeping remained perfect, which was strange for such an old mechanism. Most antique clocks need regular adjustment, but this one never gained or lost a second. The pendulum swung with metronomic precision, day and night, defying entropy itself. One night, I decided to try stopping the pendulum at 3:14. As soon as my hand touched the brass weight, static electricity crackled up my arm. The metal was ice cold despite the warm room. I yanked my hand back and the pendulum continued its swing as if I'd never touched it. I tried unplugging everything in the apartment at 3:14, thinking some kind of electrical interference might be causing the sound. The laughter came right on schedule. I tried sage burning, salt circles, and other supernatural remedies I found online, feeling foolish but desperate. Nothing changed. The breaking point came when I caught myself planning to build a false wall around the clock, sealing myself inside with it at night. That's when I knew I had to end this before I lost myself completely. I called a local clock restoration expert, explaining that I needed the mechanism dismantled and examined. He arrived that afternoon, tools in hand. As soon as he opened the case, I saw his expression change. "This isn't right," he muttered, peering at the gears. "These markings, I've never seen anything like this." The brass pieces were covered in microscopic etchings, curves and spirals that seemed to shift when viewed from different angles. They formed patterns that made my eyes hurt if I looked too long. The expert said they weren't any known maker's marks or decorative elements. He worked methodically, documenting everything before carefully removing each piece. The etchings covered every gear and weight, even parts that should never be visible during normal operation. Some appeared to continue across multiple pieces, only lining up at specific points in the clock's cycle. Near the center of the mechanism, we found something that made the expert step back in shock. Woven through the gears was a single strand of gray hair, impossibly long and thin, threaded through the works like a needle through fabric. It hadn't been visible until the clock was partly disassembled. The hair seemed to move on its own when touched, coiling away from our tools. The expert refused to handle it directly. He packed up his equipment with shaking hands, telling me he'd return the next day to finish the job. I never heard from him again. I spent that night watching the partially dismantled clock, waiting for 3:15. The laughter came right on schedule, but different this time. Fuller, clearer, almost triumphant. The single strand of hair vibrated visibly, dancing between the exposed gears. That was 6 months ago. The clock sits in my storage unit now, its mechanism still partly disassembled. I sleep better most nights, though I still wake up at 3:15 sometimes, straining to hear that familiar giggle. I've tried to research Friedrich Weber's other clocks, but most have been lost to time. Sometimes I wonder if they're out there somewhere, each with their own strange behaviors, their own impossible components. I wonder if they're all connected somehow, pieces of a larger mechanism I can't comprehend. The storage facility has 24-hour security cameras. Last week, I checked the footage from 3:15 a.m. For exactly 47 seconds, there's nothing but static. The guards say that happens sometimes. Electronic interference, they claim. But I know better. I could destroy the clock, of course, break it down completely, melt the brass, burn the wood. But something tells me that wouldn't stop the laughter. It would just set it free. So I pay my storage fees and try to forget. But sometimes, late at night, I catch myself missing that sound, the quiet giggle that meant I wasn't alone in the dark. And sometimes, just sometimes, I find myself laughing too. The fluorescent light in the break room shouldn't have been on at 11:47 p.m. I noticed it through the glass partition while working on the quarterly sales report, the bright rectangle of light breaking the darkness of the empty office floor. I hadn't turned it on when I made coffee 2 hours ago. I rubbed my eyes and looked again. Someone was standing there, a dark silhouette against the white cabinets, completely still. The figure was tall, maybe 6 feet, and thin. Too thin. Hello? My voice came out hoarse from hours of silence. The figure didn't move. Security? No response. My heart started beating faster. I stood up slowly, my chair squeaking in the quiet. The sound felt obscenely loud. "I can see you in there," I called out, trying to sound authoritative despite the tremor in my voice. "The office is closed." The figure remained motionless. Something about its stillness made my skin crawl. Normal people shift their weight, breathe visibly, make small movements. This person, was as still as a photograph. I should have called security, should have picked up my phone and dialed the front desk. But I didn't. Instead, I found myself walking toward the break room, drawn by a need to confront whatever was standing in there. My footsteps echoed on the laminate flooring, 20 feet away. I could make out more details now. The figure appeared to be wearing dark clothing, but the edges were strangely blurry, as if it was slightly out of focus. Its head was turned away from me, facing the coffee machine. "This is private property," I said, my voice stronger now. "You need to leave." Still no response. 15 feet. My palms were sweating. The air felt thick and cold. I could hear the hum of the vending machine and the soft whir of the HVAC system, but nothing else. 10 feet. The break room door was open. I stopped at the threshold, heart pounding in my chest. The figure was 5 feet away from me now. I could smell something odd, like wet cardboard and copper pennies. "I'm going to call security right now if you don't." The words died in my throat as I stepped into the break room. The space was empty. I spun around, checking every corner. Nothing behind the small table, nothing by the refrigerator, nothing in the small utility closet. The room was completely vacant. My legs felt weak. I gripped the counter to steady myself, breathing hard. The coffee machine clicked and gurgled, making me jump. The pot was half full, still warm. I hadn't made that much coffee earlier. I backed out of the break room, unwilling to turn my back on the empty space. The fluorescent light flickered once, twice. I reached for the switch and flipped it off with shaking fingers. Back at my desk, I grabbed my phone and called security. My hands were trembling so badly I had to dial twice. "Front desk, this is Mike." "This is John Reeves from marketing on the 14th floor," I said. trying to keep my voice steady. Has anyone else signed in tonight? No, sir. You're the only one logged in above the lobby. Everything okay up there? I swallowed hard. Could you check the cameras for the break room on 14 in the last few minutes? One moment. I heard keyboard clicking. Nothing unusual showing up, just the empty room. Want me to come up and take a look? I stared at the dark break room. No, that's fine. Thanks. I hung up and started packing my laptop and papers with jerky movements. The quarterly report could wait until tomorrow. The office felt different now, hostile. The shadows in the corners seemed deeper, the silence heavier. As I waited for the elevator, I kept glancing over my shoulder at the break room. The light was still off, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was in there, watching me from the darkness. The elevator arrived with a cheerful ding that sounded wrong in the tense atmosphere. I stepped in quickly and jabbed the lobby button repeatedly until the doors closed. In the mirrored walls of the elevator, I saw my reflection, pale, sweating, eyes wide. But for a fraction of a second, in the corner of the mirror, I thought I saw something else, a tall, thin shape standing perfectly still. I didn't look back as I hurried through the lobby. Mike, the security guard, waved, but I barely noticed. The night air hit me like a slap, and I gulped it down in grateful breaths. My car was the only one left in the parking garage. The sound of my footsteps echoed off the concrete walls, making it impossible to tell if other footsteps were following. I fumbled with my keys, dropping them once before managing to unlock the door. Only when I was inside with the doors locked did I allow myself to relax slightly. The familiar smell of leather and pine air freshener helped ground me. This was normal. This was real. What I'd seen in the break room, there had to be a rational explanation. I started the engine and pulled out of the garage, heading for home. The streets were nearly empty, and I found myself checking the rearview mirror more often than necessary. Each time I expected to see that figure somehow sitting in my back seat, but there was only darkness. At home, I double-checked all the locks and turned on every light in my apartment. I took a hot shower, letting the water wash away the cold sweat and tension. By the time I got into bed, I had almost convinced myself that I'd imagined the whole thing. Stress and caffeine and too many hours staring at spreadsheets, that's all it was. But I didn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that silhouette standing in the break room, unnaturally still. And somewhere deep down, I knew I would see it again. The next morning, I arrived at work early before sunrise. The office was already busy with the usual morning crowd. The break room looked completely normal in the daylight, with people making coffee and microwaving breakfast burritos. I went to my desk and pulled up the security footage from the previous night. The camera showed the break room from a high angle, giving a clear view of the entire space. I fast-forwarded through hours of emptiness until I reached 11:47 p.m. The footage showed nothing unusual. No figure standing by the coffee machine. No unexplained shadows. Just an empty room with the lights on. But I noticed something strange. At exactly 11:52 p.m., there was a brief flicker in the video, less than a second long. When I played it frame by frame, I saw it. A single frame where the image distorted, stretching vertically like a digital glitch. And in that distortion, there might have been a shape, tall and thin and wrong. I closed the video player and deleted the file. Some things are better left uninvestigated. For the next week, I left the office promptly at 5, along with everyone else. But I knew I couldn't avoid late nights forever. The quarterly report was due, and I was behind schedule. 7 days after the incident, I found myself working late again. The office emptied out gradually until I was alone on the floor. I kept the break room lights off and bought coffee from the shop downstairs before they closed. At 10:30 p.m., my phone buzzed with a text from my boss. "Report status?" I replied, "Almost done. Another hour or two." The elevator dinged in the distance. Probably the cleaning crew, I thought, but no vacuum sounds followed. No squeaking cartwheels, just silence. I tried to focus on my work, but my attention kept drifting to the dark break room. Was that movement in there? A shadow shifting? The soft sound of breathing? My phone buzzed again. Unknown number. The text read, "Behind you." I spun around so fast my chair rolled back and hit the desk. Nothing there, just empty cubicles and shadows. Another buzz, same number, break room. My hands were shaking as I set the phone down. This was someone's idea of a sick joke. Had to be. I stood up and walked deliberately toward the break room, anger temporarily overriding fear. The light was on. I hadn't turned it on. I was certain of that. But there it was, flooding the small room with harsh fluorescent light. And there, standing by the coffee machine, was the figure. This time it was facing me. But where its face should have been, there was only a blur, like a photograph taken while the subject was moving. The rest of it was perfectly still. My body went cold. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. The figure took a step toward me, the first movement I'd ever seen it make. Its motion was wrong, too smooth, like animation with missing frames. My phone buzzed in my hand. I looked down reflexively. Look up. When I raised my eyes, the figure was inches from my face. The smell of wet cardboard and copper was overwhelming. Up close, I could see that its edges weren't just blurry. They were dissolving, like ink running down a page. I stumbled backward, tripping over my own feet. My phone clattered to the floor. The figure reached out with a hand that wasn't quite a hand, more like the suggestion of fingers stretching impossibly long. I ran. Past my desk, past the cubicles, past the elevator. Too slow, too slow. I hit the stairwell door at full speed, taking the steps 3 at a time. Behind me, the door opened again, but I didn't look back. I could feel it following, moving in that horrible, smooth way, always just a few steps behind. 14 flights of stairs. My legs burned. My lungs felt like they were full of fire. But I didn't stop. Couldn't stop. I burst into the lobby, startling Mike at the security desk. "Mr. Reeves, are you okay?" I looked back at the stairwell door as it slowly swung shut. Nothing came through. Call someone," I gasped, bent over with my hands on my knees. "There's something, 14th floor." Mike was already on the phone, but I didn't stay to hear the conversation. I ran to my car and drove home, breaking speed limits all the way. The next day, I submitted my resignation. I cited personal reasons and worked my 2 weeks entirely from home. My boss was understanding. Apparently, the security footage from that night showed me running from nothing. They assumed I'd had some kind of breakdown. Maybe they were right. Maybe it was all in my mind. The figure, the texts, everything. The phone company had no record of messages from an unknown number that night. The security cameras showed nothing unusual in the break room. But sometimes, late at night, my phone buzzes with texts from numbers that don't exist. And sometimes, when I catch movement in my peripheral vision and turn to look, I see something tall and thin and impossibly still, standing in the corner of my room. I've learned to ignore it, to pretend I don't see it watching me with its blurred non-face, to act like I don't notice when it moves closer, frame by frame, night after night. But I know, eventually, it will reach me, and when it does, I don't think I'll be able to run away again. For now, I work strictly during daylight hours. I keep all my lights on at night, I avoid empty rooms and quiet spaces, and I never ever drink coffee after dark. But sometimes when I'm falling asleep, I smell wet cardboard and copper pennies, and I know it's still waiting. Somewhere between one moment and the next, perfectly still and infinitely patient. I don't know what it wants. I don't know what it is. All I know is that it's real. It's watching, and someday it will be done waiting. Until then, I live with the knowledge that reality is thinner than we think, and sometimes things slip through the cracks. If you're working late and see a light on in an empty room, don't investigate. Don't call out. And whatever you do, don't look too closely at any figure standing perfectly still in the darkness. Some questions are better left unanswered. Some doors are better left closed. And some lights are better left off. The The radio crackled to life at 2:47 a.m. on Route 16, somewhere between Mason Creek and nowhere. I remember checking my watch when it happened because the sudden burst of static jolted me from the mindless hypnosis of night driving. I'd been on the road for nearly 6 hours, making my way back from a business conference in Chicago to my apartment in Columbus. David Mitchell. My name cut through the white noise, clear as a bell. I gripped the steering wheel tighter, my knuckles going white. The voice was female, emotionless, like those automated emergency broadcast messages. David Mitchell, stop your vehicle immediately. Danger ahead. Coordinates 40, 3876 degree N, 82, 4562 degree W. Do not proceed past mile marker 147. Repeat. David Mitchell, stop your vehicle immediately. The static intensified, and I felt my heart hammering against my ribs. My hands were sweating now, leaving damp prints on the leather steering wheel. I jabbed at the radio buttons, trying to find the station again, but all I got was dead air or late-night talk shows about alien abductions. I pulled over onto the gravel shoulder, the crunch of stones under my tires echoing in the empty night. The dashboard clock's red numbers glowed in the darkness. My rental car's engine idled, a low rumble that somehow made the silence around me feel heavier. I grabbed my phone from the cup holder. No service. Of course. I'd been in and out of dead zones for the past hour. Another joy of rural driving. The GPS was still working though, and I pulled up my location. I was at mile marker 143, 4 miles from whatever I was being warned about. My throat felt dry. I reached for my water bottle, took a long drink, and tried to think this through logically. Random radio interference? Probably. Some kind of prank? Possibly. But they knew my name. My full name. I turned the radio back on and methodically went through every frequency on the dial. Country music. Static. More static. Religious sermon. Static again. Nothing like what I'd heard before. The rational part of my brain said to keep driving. I was tired, it was late, and my mind was probably playing tricks on me. But another part, the primitive one that knows about survival, kept screaming about those coordinates and my name. My actual name. I pulled out my laptop from my briefcase in the passenger seat and connected it to my phone's hotspot. No signal. I tried for 15 minutes to get online, to look up those coordinates, to find anything about weird radio broadcasts in the area. Nothing. A set of headlights appeared in my rearview mirror, growing larger. It was the first car I'd seen in almost an hour. I watched as it approached, slowed down slightly as it passed me, then continued down the dark highway. The red taillights disappeared around a bend, leaving me alone again. I checked my watch. 3:15 a.m. now. I'd been sitting here for almost 30 minutes, and the longer I sat, the more foolish I felt. But every time I put my hand on the gear shift to pull back onto the road, I heard that voice again in my head. Danger ahead. The air conditioning was making me cold, so I shut it off. The summer night's warmth crept into the car. Crickets chirped outside. A normal night. Everything was normal except for that broadcast. I decided to try one more time with the radio. I turned it on and slowly moved through the frequencies. Static. Static. More static. Then, just as I was about to give up, I heard it again. David Mitchell. The same voice, but weaker now, breaking up. Alternative route required. Proceed to Highway 37 intersection. Detour east. Repeat. David. The voice cut out completely, replaced by the sound of a late-night DJ announcing the next song. I tried finding the station again, but it was gone. My hands were shaking as I pulled up the GPS again. Highway 37 intersection was 2 miles back the way I'd come. I sat there for another 5 minutes, engine running, watching the empty road ahead and behind in my mirrors. The logical choice was to ignore this whole thing and keep driving. But they knew my name. They had specific coordinates, and now they were giving me an alternate route. I made a U-turn. The drive back to the Highway 37 intersection felt longer than it should have. Every shadow at the edge of my headlights looked wrong somehow. I kept checking my rearview mirror, but the road behind me remained empty. At the intersection, I turned east as instructed. The new road was narrower, less maintained. My headlights caught the reflection of eyes in the darkness, probably deer or raccoons watching from the woods. After about 20 minutes of driving, I saw lights ahead. As I got closer, I realized it was a small gas station, one of those independent places that looked like it hadn't been updated since the 1980s. A single fluorescent light flickered over the pumps. I pulled in, needing to use the bathroom and hoping to get some coffee. Maybe even ask the attendant if they'd heard about any weird radio broadcasts. The bell over the door chimed as I walked in. The clerk looked up from his phone, an older man with gray hair and thick glasses. "Kind of late to be out here," he said. "Yeah, got diverted from Route 16, I replied, heading for the coffee machine. "You haven't heard anything about problems on 16, have you?" He frowned. "No, should be clear all the way through. Why'd you get diverted?" I hesitated, then decided to tell him. Gonna sound crazy, but I heard this weird radio broadcast. It knew my name, told me to take this route instead. The clerk's face changed. He put his phone down slowly. "What time did you hear this?" "About 2:47. Why?" He walked over to a small TV mounted in the corner that was showing some late-night infomercial. He changed the channel to what looked like a local news station. "Watch," he said, turning up the volume. The news anchor was mid-sentence. "Major chemical spill on Route 16 near mile marker 147. A tanker truck overturned at approximately 3:45 a.m., releasing hazardous materials. Emergency crews are on scene, and the road is closed in both directions. Residents within a 5-mile radius are being evacuated." I felt the coffee cup slip from my hand, hot liquid splashing my shoes. The clerk handed me some paper towels without a word. That's exactly where..." I couldn't finish the sentence. "Sit down," the clerk said, pulling up a plastic chair from behind the counter. "You look like you need it." I sat heavily, my legs feeling weak. But how? The broadcast was an hour before the accident. The clerk poured me a fresh coffee and pulled up another chair. "You're not the first one, you know. Over the years, we've had maybe 5 or 6 people come through here with similar stories. Always the same thing. Radio broadcast, specific warnings, usually about an hour before something happens." "What kind of something?" "Different things. Accidents mostly. Bridge collapse once. Never anything good." He took off his glasses and cleaned them with his shirt. "My theory? Someone's looking out for folks, don't know who or how, but they are." I stared at my coffee, watching the steam rise. "Why me? Why those specific people?" He shrugged. "That's the real question, isn't it? Never figured that part out. Some of the others tried investigating, looking for patterns, never found anything concrete." "Did they ever hear the broadcast again?" "Nope, just the one time when they needed it." He put his glasses back on. "You can try, though. Radio's right there." He pointed to an old boombox on a shelf behind the counter. I walked over and turned it on. Static. I went through every frequency twice. Nothing but normal late-night radio. The clerk nodded like he'd expected this. Never works when you're looking for it. I spent the next few hours at that gas station drinking coffee and talking with the clerk, whose name was Bob. He told me about the other cases he knew of. The family who avoided a massive pileup, the truck driver who missed a bridge collapse, the woman who was warned away from a gas leak. Each story was different, but they all had the same elements. The static-filled broadcast, the specific warning, the verification that something bad had indeed happened. As the sun started to rise, I thanked Bob and got ready to leave. He wrote down his phone number on a receipt. "If you ever hear it again, let me know," he said. "I keep track of these things." I took the paper and tucked it into my wallet. "What do you think it means? All of this?" He smiled slightly. "I think it means someone or something is watching out for us. Maybe not all of us, maybe not all the time, but sometimes, when it really matters." He paused. "Or maybe it's just random radio interference and coincidence. Choose whichever explanation helps you sleep better." I got back in my car and checked my phone. Service was back. There were several news alerts about the chemical spill, warning people to avoid the area. The cleanup would take days. As I pulled out of the gas station, I turned on the radio one last time. Morning news, traffic reports, weather updates, normal broadcasts for a normal day. But I knew I'd never listen to late-night radio the same way again. I took the long way home, staying off the main highways, keeping the radio on but turned low. Every burst of static made me tense up, waiting to hear my name again. It never came. When I finally got back to my apartment, I sat in my parking spot for a long time, thinking about what had happened. I still had Bob's number in my wallet. Part of me wanted to start investigating, to try to find patterns, to understand how and why this happened. But another part of me remembered what Bob had said about those other people who tried to investigate. They never found anything. Maybe some mysteries aren't meant to be solved. I still drive that route sometimes when work takes me to Chicago. I always stop at Bob's gas station, buy some coffee, chat for a while. He hasn't had any new cases to report. The radio in my car works perfectly normal now, picking up all the usual stations without any strange interruptions. But late at night, when I'm driving alone on empty roads, I keep the volume turned up just a little higher than usual, just in case. Because somewhere out there, through the static and the darkness, someone or something might be trying to send another message. And next time, it might not be for me, but I want to make sure whoever needs to hear it does. I've never heard my name on the radio again, but I've developed a new appreciation for static. Some people find it annoying, that crackling white noise between stations. Not me. Now I know that sometimes, hidden in that static, there might be a message that saves someone's life. We just have to be listening. I first noticed something was wrong when I couldn't find my coffee mug one morning. Not earth-shattering, sure, but I keep my morning routine strict. Coffee mug on the right side of the sink, ready for my 6 a.m. brew. That morning in September, it sat on the kitchen counter a good 3 feet from its spot. I stood there in my boxers and white t-shirt staring at it, the morning sun streaming through the kitchen window. My brain refused to process this small but significant change. I had just moved into this rental house 2 weeks ago, a modest 3-bedroom ranch-style home in a quiet neighborhood in Burlington, Vermont. The rent was surprisingly reasonable for the area, especially considering the finished basement and the well-maintained yard. The landlord, a thin man named Gary Peterson, had seemed almost too eager to get someone in the house. He'd dropped the security deposit requirement after our first meeting. I blamed the mug incident on my own forgetfulness. Moving does that to you, disrupts your patterns, makes you second-guess your memory. But then other things started happening. My keys would show up in different places. I'd leave them on the hook by the door, only to find them on the dining room table the next morning. The TV remote migrated from the coffee table to the kitchen counter. My shoes, always lined up by the front door, would be scattered, one in the entryway, its mate somehow ending up near the basement door. I live alone. I've always lived alone. I like it that way. After my divorce 3 years ago, the silence became my comfort. I know my habits. I know where I put things. The incidents escalated gradually. A week after the coffee mug incident, I came home from work to find all my kitchen chairs pushed away from the table at odd angles. I distinctly remembered tucking them in that morning. It's a habit my mother drilled into me as a kid. I stood in the doorway of the kitchen, my laptop bag still slung over my shoulder, and felt the first real tendril of unease curl in my stomach. I walked through the house, checking windows and doors, all locked. No signs of forced entry. The basement door was shut and locked just as I'd left it. I even checked the garage, empty except for my Toyota Camry and some moving boxes I still hadn't unpacked. That night I lay in bed and listened to the house settle. Every creak and groan made me tense up. I told myself old houses make noise, it's normal. But this house wasn't that old. Built in 1985 according to the rental agreement. The next morning, my toothbrush was in the toilet. I bought security cameras that day, 4 of them. I set them up in the main living areas, living room, kitchen, hallway, and one pointing at the front door. They connected to an app on my phone with motion detection and night vision. I felt better having them installed, more in control. The footage showed nothing unusual for the first few days. Just me moving around my house, looking increasingly tired as the week wore on. My sleep had gotten worse. I'd wake up at odd hours feeling like someone had just walked past my bed. Then one night around 2 a.m., the hallway camera caught one of my hoodies sliding off its hook and dropping to the floor. Just falling, with no one near it. I watched the footage 20 times. There was no draft, no shake in the wall, nothing to explain it. The hood compressed slightly as it hit the floor like someone had stepped on it, but the camera showed empty space. I almost moved out that day. I sat in my car for an hour during lunch break, scrolling through apartment listings on my phone. But my 1-year lease had eaten most of my savings, and breaking it would cost another 2 months' rent. I couldn't afford it. Not with my car payment and the leftover debt from the divorce. So I stayed. I started leaving lights on at night. I bought more lamps, placing them strategically around the house to eliminate shadows. My electric bill would be hell, but the darkness had become unbearable. The cameras kept recording. Small objects would move when I wasn't in frame. A pen rolling across my desk, a magazine sliding off the coffee table. My wallet relocating from my jacket pocket to the kitchen counter while my jacket hung untouched on its hook. I stopped telling people about it. I'd mentioned some of the early incidents to coworkers, but their concerned looks made me shut up quickly. My sister called one night and I nearly broke down and told her everything. Instead, I talked about work and asked about her kids. The night it all changed, I was watching a basketball game. Just a regular Thursday evening in October, about 6 weeks after moving in. I sat on my couch, a beaten-up brown leather thing I'd kept in the divorce, with a beer in my hand. The Celtics were up by 12 in the third quarter. The couch cushion next to me sank down. I felt it clearly, the leather shifting, adjusting to weight, the same sensation as when someone sits down next to you. I froze, beer halfway to my mouth, eyes locked on the empty space beside me. The cushion compressed about 2 inches, a normal amount for an average-sized adult. I couldn't move. My chest felt tight, each breath shallow and quick. Sweat broke out on my forehead and upper lip. The beer trembled in my hand, foam sliding down the bottle. The indentation remained perfectly still, like whoever, whatever, had settled in to watch the game with me. 5 minutes passed. 10. The game continued on screen, but I couldn't focus on it. My eyes stayed fixed on that damn cushion, on the clear outline of someone sitting there. Someone I couldn't see. The air felt heavy, thick, colder than it should have been, despite the heating system humming steadily. My phone sat on the coffee table just out of reach. The security camera in the corner blinked its red light steadily. I managed to turn my head, slowly, to look at the space where a person's face would be. Nothing, just empty air. But I swear I heard breathing. Soft, regular breaths, almost peaceful. My muscles screamed from holding still so long. The beer had warmed in my grip. A commercial played on TV, the sudden increase in volume making me jump. The cushion shifted. I watched, paralyzed as the impression changed shape, like someone leaning forward, then standing up. The leather gradually returned to its normal position, tiny creases smoothing out one by one. I sat there for another hour, completely still, the game forgotten. Nothing else happened. When I finally gathered the courage to check the security footage, it showed exactly what I'd felt. The cushion depressing on its own, holding that shape for 15 minutes, then returning to normal. I called my landlord the next morning. Gary Peterson answered on the first ring, like he'd been waiting for my call. "Has anyone..." I hesitated, not sure how to phrase it. "Did anything unusual ever happen when you lived here?" Silence on the line. Then, "What kind of unusual things?" I told him everything. The moving objects, the cameras, the couch. My voice shook as I described it, but once I started, I couldn't stop. When I finished, the line stayed quiet so long I thought we'd lost the connection. "The previous tenant noticed things too," he finally said, "and the one before her. That's why the rent's so low." "Why didn't you tell me?" Would you have rented it if I had? He sighed. Look, nobody's ever been hurt. Things move around, sometimes you feel a presence. But that's it. I've had the house blessed, brought in paranormal investigators, even had a structural engineer check for gas leaks that might cause hallucinations. Nothing explains it. I can't live like this, I said. Previous tenants said they got used to it. Some even felt comforted, like they had a roommate who never ate their food or left dishes in the sink. One woman said it reminded her of her college days, sharing space with someone but keeping to themselves. I wanted to scream at him, tell him he was crazy. But I thought about the couch incident, how the presence had just sat there watching basketball with me. No malice, no threat, just sharing space. That was 3 months ago. I'm still in the house. Things still move around, but I've started to see patterns. My coffee mug only relocates when I forget to rinse it out. The TV remote appears on the kitchen counter when I fall asleep with the TV on, volume too loud. It's like having a slightly obsessive, invisible roommate with a thing for tidiness. The couch incidents happen about once a week now. Always during a game, always in the evening. The presence sits for exactly 15 minutes, then leaves. I've stopped freezing up when it happens. Sometimes I even find myself commenting on the game, like I would with a real roommate. The cushion never responds, never moves except to leave. But the air feels different when it's there. Not heavy or cold anymore, just occupied. I still keep the cameras running, still leave lights on at night. But I've stopped jumping at every noise, stopped checking my phone footage obsessively. The house has settled into a routine, me and whatever shares it, living our separate but overlapping lives. Last week I left my coffee mug unwashed in the sink before leaving for work. When I came home, it was clean, dried, and in its proper spot. I stood there looking at it for a long time, then said, "Thank you," to the empty kitchen. The air shifted slightly, like someone had walked past me, and for the first time since moving in, I didn't feel afraid. I know how this sounds. If someone had told me this story 6 months ago, I'd have called them crazy. Maybe I am crazy. Maybe the divorce and the loneliness and the stress of moving broke something in my brain. But last night, watching the Celtics lose in overtime, I felt the couch cushion sink down right on schedule. And for the first time, I didn't tense up. I just said, "Hell of a game, huh?" and took another sip of my beer. The cushion stayed occupied for 30 minutes instead of the usual 15. I'm still not sure what lives in this house with me. I'm not sure I want to know. But I've started thinking of it less as a haunting and more as a peculiar kind of coexistence. The rent is reasonable, the neighborhood is quiet, and my invisible roommate does occasionally wash the dishes. My lease comes up for renewal next month. Gary Peterson called yesterday, sounding nervous, asking about my plans. I told him I'd be staying. The things that scare us most, I'm learning, aren't always the things that go bump in the night. Sometimes they're the empty spaces that aren't really empty, the silent rooms that aren't quite silent. Sometimes they're just lonely, like we are. Tonight there's another Celtics game. I've got 2 beers cooling in the fridge, one for me, and one I'll leave on the coffee table. Maybe it'll be gone by morning, maybe it won't. Either way, I'm starting to feel like I'm home. I should have known something was wrong when the realtor couldn't look me in the eye while showing me the master bedroom. She kept her head down, rushing through the features like she was reading from a script. The price was too good for a 4-bedroom Victorian in this neighborhood. But I bought it anyway. I needed a fresh start after the divorce, and this place, even with its peeling wallpaper and creaky floors, felt like an opportunity. The first week went fine. I worked remotely during the day and spent my evenings scraping old wallpaper and prepping the walls for paint. The previous owners had left the place in rough shape, but nothing I couldn't handle with some elbow grease and YouTube tutorials. It started in the upstairs hallway. I'd chosen a warm beige to brighten up the space and cover the dingy yellow that someone had painted decades ago. The first coat went on smooth. I remember feeling satisfied as I cleaned my brushes that evening, thinking about how much better the place would look once I finished. I woke up the next morning to get coffee before my first video call. The sun wasn't fully up yet, and the hallway was dim. I nearly dropped my mug when I saw it, a handprint pressed into the wall dark against the fresh paint. Not like someone had touched wet paint, but like someone had pushed their hand through from the other side, making the paint bubble and stretch. I touched it. The paint was completely dry and the handprint was cold. I figured some trick of the old plaster had made the paint dry weird. Houses this old have quirks. I sanded the spot down and applied another coat. The next morning there were 3 handprints. I'm not easily spooked. I've done construction work and I know old houses make weird sounds and settle in strange ways, but these handprints were different. They were perfect impressions of human hands, pressed outward like someone trying to break through a membrane, and they were exactly where I'd painted over the original ones. I took photos and sent them to my contractor friend Mike. He suggested it might be some kind of chemical reaction with the old paint, or maybe moisture damage pushing through. He offered to come take a look that weekend. I agreed, but I didn't wait. I spent that evening stripping all the paint from that section of wall, right down to the bare plaster. My shoulders ached from scraping, but I wanted to solve this before it got worse. The wall looked normal underneath. No water damage, no strange substances, just old plaster with layers of paint clinging to the edges where I hadn't scraped completely. I let it dry overnight and applied a primer the next day. The handprints came back. 5 of them this time spread out in an arc at chest height. The paint around them felt ice cold, while the rest of the wall was room temperature. My hands shook as I took more pictures. The prints weren't just impressions anymore. I could see fingernails, lifelines, the subtle creases of knuckles. I called Mike and moved my work laptop downstairs. I didn't want to walk past that hallway more than I had to. The prints didn't spread or move during the day, but each morning there were more of them. They started appearing on other walls I'd painted, always pushing outward, always perfectly detailed. Mike came over on Saturday morning. He went pale when he saw the hallway. "This isn't normal," he said, running his hand over one of the prints. "This isn't any kind of water damage or chemical reaction I've ever seen." We spent the afternoon cutting into the wall to check the structure behind it. The plaster and lathe were intact. No hidden spaces, no signs of anything unusual. Mike helped me patch the holes and apply new paint. He stayed until it dried, and the surface looked perfect. He suggested I stay at his place that night, but I refused. This was my house. I wasn't going to let some weird paint issue drive me out. I regretted that decision at 3 a.m. when I heard it. A soft, wet sound like someone pressing their palms against glass. The hallway motion sensor light had triggered. My whole body went rigid as I lay in bed listening. The sound came again, followed by a slow squishing noise, like something thick and viscous being pushed aside. I grabbed my phone and turned on the flashlight. My feet felt like lead as I walked to the bedroom door. The hallway light flickered and I saw them. Hands pressing through the fresh paint, fingers first, then palms, bulging outward before retreating, leaving their perfect impressions behind. The paint rippled like water around each new print. I didn't scream. I didn't run. I stood there filming with shaking hands as more prints appeared, spreading across the wall like a timeline of invisible people trying to break through. The temperature dropped so low I could see my breath. My phone's battery drained from 80% to 0 in seconds, plunging me into darkness. I stumbled downstairs and spent the rest of the night in my car watching the house. Nothing moved in the windows. No lights flickered. It looked perfectly normal as the sun came up. I called in sick to work and went to the county records office. The house had changed hands 6 times in the past 30 years, which seemed high for the neighborhood. No reports of deaths or crimes, just a string of owners who sold after less than 2 years. The original building permits from 1890 showed nothing unusual. No tragic stories in the local newspaper archives. The clerk, an older woman with gray hair and thick glasses, noticed me searching. "The Patterson house," she said, nodding. "People used to say it had a door where there shouldn't be one." I asked her what she meant. She told me that in the 1920s the house had been used as a way station for people escaping bad situations, abuse, persecution, threats of violence. The owners would hide people in the walls temporarily, using a network of concealed spaces built between the rooms. But all those spaces had been sealed up and plastered over decades ago. The clerk didn't know more details, and I couldn't find any official records about it. I went home and sat in my car for an hour, watching the house. It was just a house. A big old house that needed work, but just a house. People had lived here safely for years. Whatever was happening with the handprints, there had to be a rational explanation. I called a paint specialist. He tested samples and found nothing unusual in the chemical composition. I hired an environmental inspector who checked for mold, moisture, and air quality issues. Everything came back normal. I even had a structural engineer examine the walls. She said the house was completely sound. The handprints kept coming back every night. I tried different types of paint, different primers, even special sealants designed for extreme conditions. Nothing worked. They always returned, pushing through every layer like the walls were made of clay. I started sleeping downstairs on the couch with all the lights on. During the day, I worked from my kitchen table, trying to ignore the sounds of movement from upstairs. Sometimes I heard shuffling, like people walking carefully, trying not to be noticed. Other times it was just the press of hands against the walls, that wet squishing sound that made my stomach turn. After 2 weeks of this, I broke down and called a paranormal investigator. I felt ridiculous doing it, but I was desperate for answers. She arrived with equipment I didn't understand: EMF meters, infrared cameras, digital voice recorders. She spent hours going through the house, focusing on the areas with the handprints. "They're not trying to scare you," she said finally, showing me thermal images of cold spots shaped like human figures clustered around the handprints. "They're trying to be found." She explained her theory. The hidden spaces in the walls had been sealed with people still inside them. Their spirits were still trying to escape, reaching out through the only means they had. The handprints were a record of their attempts to be discovered, to have their stories told. I didn't believe in ghosts. I still don't know if I do. But I couldn't ignore what was happening in my house. The investigator suggested I try communicating with them, not through seances or Ouija boards, but simply by acknowledging their presence and their history. That night, I stood in the hallway with all the lights on. I felt stupid talking to empty air, but I did it anyway. I told whoever was there that I knew about the way station, that I understood they were trying to be found. I promised to document their story, to make sure people knew what had happened here. The temperature dropped immediately. I forced myself to stay still as handprints began appearing on the wall, slower this time, more deliberate. They formed 2 rows, like people lining up. Then they stopped. The cold lifted. The silence felt different, not empty, but peaceful. The prints stayed this time. No matter how many coats of paint I applied, they remained visible, a permanent record pressed into the walls. I hired an architectural historian to document everything. She matched the size and placement of the prints to the likely locations of the hidden spaces, creating a map of the house's secret history. I still live here. The handprints don't spread anymore, and the sounds have stopped. Sometimes on quiet nights I think I hear faint footsteps, but they don't feel threatening. They're just echoes of people who passed through here long ago, leaving their marks on the walls as proof they existed. I've learned to live with the evidence of what happened in this house. I keep the hallway light on at night, not out of fear now, but out of respect. The walls tell a story that needed to be told, written in handprints that refuse to be painted over. Last week I got a letter from the Historical Society. They want to preserve the house as a landmark, to honor its role in helping people escape to safety. I agreed immediately. The handprints will stay visible, a testament to those who reached out through time and paint to be remembered. I'm still not sure I believe in ghosts, but I believe in the power of stories to push through whatever tries to cover them up. My house isn't haunted. It's history made visible, one handprint at a time. The realtor calls sometimes asking if I want to sell. The market's hot, she says, and she has buyers interested in the location. I always tell her the same thing. This house isn't for sale. Its story isn't finished being told. So I stay, sharing my space with the memories pressed into the walls. Each morning I walk past the handprints and notice something new. The angle of a finger, the depth of a palm, the story written in each unique impression. They're not trying to break through anymore. They've already succeeded in making their mark and making sure they won't be forgotten. I've started researching the history of similar way stations in the area, building a record of the network that helped so many people find safety. Sometimes visitors come to see the handprints, to touch the walls and feel the cold spots that never quite fade. They leave with a better understanding of what happened here, of the courage it took to hide and help others in dangerous times. The house creaks and settles at night, but the sounds don't bother me anymore. This is what it means to live with history. Not just the comfortable parts, but the hard truths pressed into the walls, reaching out to be acknowledged. I've made my peace with the handprints. They're not a haunting. They're a reminder that every house holds stories, and some refuse to be painted over. Three sharp knocks hit my bedroom window at exactly 3:47 a.m. I know the time because I've been staring at my phone's clock every night for the past 2 weeks, waiting for them. The sound always comes in the same pattern. Tap, tap, tap. Clear. Deliberate. Impossible. I live on the 3rd floor of the Warren Heights apartment building in downtown Seattle. My bedroom window faces nothing but empty air and a 40-foot drop to the concrete below. There's no tree branch that could reach it, no ledge wide enough for anyone to stand on, and no fire escape on this side of the building. The window washers only come twice a year, and they always notify us a week in advance. The first time I heard the knocks, I jumped out of bed and ran to the window, yanking the curtains open. Nothing. Just the yellow glow of streetlights below and the occasional passing car. I opened the window and leaned out, looking in every direction. The brick walls were smooth and unbroken. No signs of any climbing equipment, no ropes, no ladder. Nothing that could explain those 3 distinct knocks. I called the police that first night. Officer Martinez showed up 20 minutes later, checked my window inside and out, and even walked the perimeter of the building. She found nothing unusual. Probably just the building settling, she said. These old structures make all kinds of noises. But buildings don't settle in perfect patterns of 3 knocks at the exact same time every night. I installed a security camera pointed at my window the next day. The footage showed nothing. At 3:47 a.m., the knocks were clearly audible on the recording, but the window remained empty. No shadow, no movement, nothing that could explain the sound. I tried sleeping on my couch for 3 nights. The knocks still came from my bedroom. When I slept at my sister's house across town, my security camera caught them anyway. My neighbor, Mrs. Chen from apartment 3B, says she never hears anything. Neither does Mr. Patterson in 3D. I've stayed awake countless nights, sitting in my reading chair with all the lights on, staring at that window. My heart races every time 3:47 approaches. My palms sweat. My mouth goes dry. But knowing exactly when it's coming doesn't make it any less unsettling. Last week, I covered the window with thick plywood. The maintenance guy helped me screw it directly into the wall. "That'll keep out any draft," he said with a confused look. I didn't bother explaining. The knocks came through the plywood. I've measured the temperature around the window with an infrared thermometer. No cold spots, no EMF readings. I'm not superstitious, but I've tried sage, crosses, and every other supposed protection I could find online. Nothing changes. Tonight marks 2 weeks since it started. I'm sitting in my bedroom, laptop open on my knees as I type this. It's 3:43 a.m. The plywood is still secure over my window. My security camera is recording. My phone is ready to dial 911, though I know they won't find anything. They never do. 3:44 a.m. My hands are shaking slightly as I type. The air in the room feels heavy, like it always does right before. I can hear the soft hum of my laptop fan, the distant sound of traffic below, the clicking of my keys. 3:45 a.m. I've started keeping a detailed log of everything. The knocks never vary in volume or intensity. They're always perfectly spaced, about half a second apart. The sound is like knuckles on glass, even through the plywood. Clear, sharp, purposeful. 3:46 a.m. My heart is pounding now. Sweat beads on my forehead. The cursor blinks on my screen. I've considered moving, but something tells me it would follow me. Something tells me it's not the window that matters. 3:47 a.m. Tap, 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 there it is. Right on schedule. My hands freeze over the keyboard. The sound is so crisp, so present, like someone standing right there, just inches away on the other side of that plywood. I force myself to breathe, in through my nose, out through my mouth. The sound doesn't repeat. It never does. Just those 3 knocks once per night at 3:47 a.m. exactly. I get up from my chair, legs slightly unsteady. I do this every night, even though I know what I'll find. The plywood is solid under my fingers. I press my ear against it, listening. Nothing but the usual night sounds of the city below. My security camera's red light blinks steadily. Another night of footage that will show nothing. Another entry in my log that will provide no answers. I've started seeing a therapist. Doctor. Ramirez listens patiently as I describe the knocks, the investigations, my growing obsession with finding an explanation. She suggests stress, anxiety, auditory hallucinations. But how can it be a hallucination when my camera picks it up? How can it be stress when it's so precise, so consistent? The lack of sleep is affecting my work. I'm a software developer, and my code has been sloppy lately. My team lead noticed. "You look like hell," he said yesterday. "Maybe take a few days off?" I nodded, but we both know time off won't help. I've spent hours researching similar experiences online. Most stories involve ground floor windows or easily accessible locations. Nothing quite matches my situation. The few similar accounts I've found were clearly fiction, creepy stories written for entertainment. This is real. This is happening. The plywood has started to feel like a joke, a pathetic attempt to block out something that clearly doesn't follow physical laws. Sometimes I wonder if I should just take it down, face whatever's out there directly. But then I remember the darkness beyond my window, the sheer drop to the street below, and my courage fails. My sister Sarah visits more often now. She's worried. I see it in the way she looks at me, in her careful suggestions about seeing different doctors, trying different medications. "Maybe you should stay with me for a while," she said last weekend. "Just until you feel better." But I can't. The knocks would just follow me there, and then she'd have to deal with it too. I've started recording everything on my phone as well as the security camera. Different angles, different devices, hoping to catch something the others missed. The knocks are clear on every recording, but there's never anything visible. No distortion in the air, no unexplained shadows, no sign of what's causing them. The worst part is the waiting. Knowing it's coming, but not knowing why. Not knowing what it wants. Not knowing if one night it will be more than just knocks. Every evening I tell myself I won't stay up, that I'll try to sleep through it. Every night I find myself wide awake at 3:47 a.m., heart racing, waiting. I've developed a routine. At 3:40 I check all my recording devices. At 3:45 I position myself in my reading chair, facing the window. The plywood has become a sort of screen, a blank surface for my imagination to project its worst fears onto. But I force myself to watch it anyway. Maybe one night I'll see something different. Maybe one night I'll understand. The building manager is getting suspicious of my constant requests for security checks and maintenance inspections. "Mr. Walker," he said last time, "we've been over every inch of that wall. There's nothing there." He's right, of course. Whatever's causing this isn't something his maintenance crew can fix. I've started keeping track of other patterns. The weather doesn't affect the knocks. They come through rain, wind, and clear skies alike. The temperature doesn't matter. The day of the week doesn't matter. Nothing seems to matter except the time. 3:47 a.m. every single night. My appetite is gone. I force myself to eat protein bars and drink coffee to stay alert. My clothes hang looser now. Sarah brought groceries yesterday, tried to cook me dinner. "You need to take care of yourself," she said. "Whatever this is, starving yourself won't help." She's right, but food tastes like ash in my mouth. The only time I feel somewhat normal is during the day at work. The bright office lights, The constant noise of keyboards and conversations, the mundane problems of debugging code. It all feels so wonderfully ordinary. But as soon as the sun sets, the dread starts building again. I've considered setting up a live stream, letting others watch and verify what's happening. But what if nothing shows up on their end? What if I'm just broadcasting my descent into paranoia? What if something does show up, something I'm not ready to see? The building's security guard, Ron, has started doing extra patrols around 3:45 a.m. He's a good guy trying to help even though he thinks I'm losing it. Sometimes I watch him from my window, making his rounds in the parking lot below, looking up at my window with concern. He never sees anything unusual. Last night I tried something new. At 3:46 a.m. I pressed my hand flat against the plywood waiting. When the knocks came, I felt no vibration. The sound was there, clear as ever, but the wood remained still under my palm. It was like the sound existed independently of any physical source. I've started keeping a paper journal as well as my digital records. Something about writing by hand makes it feel more real, more documented. Pages filled with times, dates, weather conditions, what I ate, what I was wearing, any detail that might turn out to be relevant. None of it has revealed any pattern beyond the obvious. The plywood is becoming stained with my fingerprints. I touch it constantly, searching for weak spots, temperature changes, anything that might provide a clue. The maintenance guy offered to paint it, but I refused. Those marks are my only physical evidence that this experience is real, that I'm not just imagining everything. My doctor prescribed sleeping pills last week. I haven't taken them. The thought of being unconscious when the knocks come is somehow worse than the exhaustion of staying awake. What if something changes? What if I miss something important? The nights are the longest, between 3:48 a.m. and sunrise. After the knocks come, after the adrenaline fades, I'm left sitting in my chair staring at the plywood, wondering. The questions circle in my mind like hungry birds. Why me? Why this window? Why 3:47 a.m.? Why 3 knocks? I've started talking to it sometimes, in those dark hours after the knocks. I ask questions, make demands, even try to bargain. The silence that follows is always absolute, as if whatever's out there is listening but choosing not to respond. My laptop contains hundreds of audio files now, all identical. Background noise, 3 clear knocks, more background noise. I've analyzed them with every sound processing software I could find. The knocks are always at the same frequency, the same volume, the same duration. Perfect consistency that should be impossible for any natural phenomenon. Sometimes I dream about the knocks during the brief periods when I do manage to sleep. In my dreams, I finally open the window, finally confront whatever's out there. But I always wake up before I see it, heart pounding, sheets soaked with sweat. The plywood has become a wall between 2 worlds, my reality of facts, technology, and logic, and whatever exists on the other side. During the day, it looks almost silly, just a piece of hardware store lumber screwed into my wall. But at night, in those minutes leading up to 3:47 a.m., it becomes something else. A barrier, a symbol, a question. I've started leaving my bedroom door open at night. The thought of being trapped in here between the plywood and the door makes my chest tight. The open door is an illusion of escape, even though I know I'll never use it. I'll never run from this, I can't. The knocks are coming again soon. My phone shows 3:42 a.m. My recordings are running. My eyes are fixed on the plywood. Another night of waiting, watching, wondering. Another night of 3 knocks that shouldn't be possible. Another night of questions without answers. Maybe tomorrow will be different. Maybe tomorrow I'll figure it out. Maybe tomorrow the knocks won't come. But I know they will. At 3:47 a.m., like always, clear, sharp, impossible. The intercom buzzer jolted me awake at exactly midnight. I know the time because I'd fallen asleep on my couch watching reruns, and the digital display on my cable box blinked 12-hour when the harsh electronic tone cut through my apartment. Living alone on the 14th floor of Highland Towers, I wasn't expecting any visitors, especially not at this hour. I sat up, disoriented, as another buzz pierced the silence. My apartment was dark except for the blue glow of the TV. Outside my windows, Chicago's downtown lights twinkled against the cloudy October sky. The buzzer rang again, more insistent this time. Who could that be? I muttered, pushing myself off the couch. My bare feet hit the cold hardwood floor as I walked to the intercom panel by my front door. The system was basic, just a speaker and talk button, no video. But my living room windows offered a clear view of the building's entrance 14 stories below, illuminated by bright security lights. I pressed the talk button. Hello? Static crackled, then a voice came through, soft, almost whispered. Let me in. I frowned, moving to the window. The entrance was empty. No one stood at the call box, no one waited by the glass doors, just an empty sidewalk and a few parked cars. Who is this? I asked into the intercom. Please, the voice whispered. Let me in. It's cold out here. My skin prickled. I stared harder at the entrance below, but there was definitely no one there. The security lights cast a bright circle on the concrete, revealing nothing but fallen leaves skittering in the wind. I can see the entrance from my window, I said firmly. There's nobody there. Silence. Then, I'm right here. Please, let me in. The voice sounded different now, still quiet, but with an edge I couldn't place. My heart began to pound. I switched on my living room lights and pressed my face against the window glass, scanning the entire front of the building. The street was deserted. Look, I don't know who this is, but I can see there's no one at the entrance. Stop buzzing or I'm calling security. More static then. I'm right here. Look harder. Let me in, let me in, let me in. The voice repeated the phrase in a monotone whisper that made my hands shake. I jabbed the intercom button. I'm calling security right now. I grabbed my phone from the coffee table and pulled up the building's after-hours security number. As I was about to dial, the buzzer sounded again, a long, unbroken tone that went on and on. I covered my ears, the sound drilling into my skull. When it finally stopped, I immediately called security. The phone rang 6 times before going to voicemail. I tried again. Same result. That's when I noticed my cell signal was down to 1 bar, unusual for my high-rise apartment. The buzzer screamed again. I jumped, nearly dropping my phone. This time when it stopped, the voice came through without me pressing the talk button. I see you standing there in your blue t-shirt. Let me in. Ice shot down my spine. I was wearing a blue shirt. I stumbled back from the intercom, staring at it in horror. The button wasn't depressed. There was no way the system should be transmitting. That's impossible, I whispered. That's impossible. Let me in, let me in, let me in, let me in. The monotone whisper filled my apartment, coming from the intercom speaker despite the system being off. I ran to my bedroom and grabbed the baseball bat I kept under my bed. My hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped it. Back in the living room, I did a quick circuit checking my locks. Front door, deadbolt engaged. Balcony door, locked and security bar in place. Windows, all sealed. I was on the 14th floor. No one could get in from outside. The intercom stayed silent as I moved through the apartment. My breath came in short gasps. Sweat ran down my back despite the October chill. I tried security again. Still no answer. My gaze kept being drawn to the entrance below. The security lights flickered once, momentarily plunging the street into darkness. When they came back on, something was different. I pressed my face to the glass, trying to figure out what had changed. The call box. Its metal face used to reflect the security lights, but now it looked dark, almost like it was covered in... The buzzer shrieked. I jerked back from the window as the voice filled my apartment. I'm coming up. No, you're not, I growled, gripping my bat tighter. There's nobody there. I'm watching. This is some kind of prank. Watch, the voice whispered. The security lights flickered again. In that brief moment of darkness, I saw movement at the entrance, a darker shadow against the black. When the lights stabilized, nothing was there. But now the front doors stood open, swaying slightly in the wind. "That's not possible," I said. "Those doors are locked after 10 p.m. They can only be opened with a key card." "I'm in the lobby," the voice said. It sounded clearer now, less static-filled. "Coming to the elevator." I ran to my front door and pressed my eye to the peephole. The hallway was empty, lit by harsh fluorescent lights. The elevator was at the far end. I could see its floor indicator showing L for lobby. My phone was still clutched in my sweating hand. I tried calling 911, but now I had no signal at all. The elevator indicator began to move. L, 1, 2, 3. No, I muttered. I grabbed my keys from the entry table. I could take the emergency stairs down to the garage, get to my car. The elevator continued its climb. 6, 7, 8. I reached for the deadbolt just as the hall lights went out. Complete darkness filled my apartment and the corridor beyond. I froze. Key extended toward the lock. "Here I come," the voice whispered through the dark. It didn't come from the intercom this time. It came from right outside my door. I stumbled backward, holding the bat in front of me. In the pitch black, I heard a sound that made my blood run cold, the metallic scraping of a key in my lock. "That's not possible," I gasped. "I have the only key." The deadbolt clicked. The door handle began to turn. I swung the bat blindly as the door creaked open, but it hit nothing but air. Cold wind rushed into my apartment. The security lights outside flickered once more, sending brief illumination through my windows. In that flash, I saw my front door standing open to an empty hallway. The elevator indicator showed 14. "I'm here," the voice whispered from everywhere and nowhere. The lights outside stabilized. I stood in my entry, bat raised, staring at the empty hallway. The elevator doors were closed. Nothing moved in the shadows. My hands trembled as I slowly pushed my front door shut. The deadbolt engaged with a solid click. I backed away, keeping my eyes fixed on the door. "This isn't real," I said. "I'm dreaming on the couch. I need to wake up." But I wasn't dreaming. The cold sweat running down my back was real. The terror coursing through my veins was real. And the voice that whispered through my apartment was real. "Let me in. Let me in. Let me in." I spun in circles, trying to locate the source. It seemed to come from everywhere. The intercom, the air vents, behind the walls. The security lights outside flickered rapidly now, strobing like a disco. In the stuttering light, I saw movement in my peripheral vision, but every time I turned to look, there was nothing there. My back hit the wall. I slid down it until I was crouched in a defensive position, bat extended. The lights outside went out completely, plunging my apartment into darkness broken only by the dim glow of my TV. In that faint blue light, I saw something move across my living room. Not a person, more like a deeper patch of shadow sliding along the walls. The temperature dropped. My breath came out in visible puffs. "What do you want?" I shouted. "Why are you doing this?" The shadow paused. In the TV's glow, it seemed to turn toward me. The voice whispered from directly in front of my face. "I just want to come in." I swung the bat. It passed through empty air as the shadow dissolved. The security lights outside blazed back to life, filling my apartment with harsh brightness. I was alone. The intercom buzzed. I jumped, hitting my head against the wall. The sound cut off abruptly, leaving only the hum of my refrigerator and my ragged breathing. I stayed crouched there until my legs cramped, watching the door, the windows, the shadows in every corner. Nothing moved. No voices whispered. The security lights remained steady. When my phone suddenly chirped, I nearly screamed. Signal had returned, 5 full bars. The time showed 3:47 a.m. I had 3 missed calls from building security. I called them back with shaking fingers. The night guard answered immediately. "Mr. Roberts, are you all right? We got reports of a disturbance on your floor. Lights going out, strange noises. I tried calling but couldn't get through. I did a sweep but didn't find anything suspicious." "I'm okay," I managed to say. "Just, can you check the security cameras for the front entrance and lobby between midnight and now?" Already did, sir. Everything's normal. No one entered or exited the building. The front door stayed locked. Why? Did you see something? I stared at my front door. The deadbolt was still engaged. The windows were still sealed. The balcony door was still secure. No, I said finally. Must have been a bad dream. But I knew it wasn't a dream. As I hung up, the intercom crackled once, so quietly I almost missed it. A whisper, barely audible. Tomorrow night. I didn't sleep. I sat on my couch with all the lights on, bat in my lap, watching the sun rise over Chicago. When my alarm went off at 7 a.m., I called in sick to work. Then I called a locksmith to change my deadbolt and a security company to install cameras and motion sensors. That was yesterday. Now I'm sitting here again, watching the clock tick toward midnight. The new security system is armed. The new deadbolt is engaged. I've triple-checked every window and door, but I know none of it will matter. Because as the digital display clicks from 11:59 to 12:00, I hear it, the buzz of the intercom, and a whispered voice that turns my blood to ice. I'm back. Let me in. My hands were shaking when I pulled into my driveway at 3:47 a.m. I've been driving for rideshare apps for 3 years now, and nothing. Not the drunk college kids, not the arguing couples, not even the guy who tried to rob me last summer. Nothing had ever rattled me like what happened tonight. I need to write this down while it's fresh in my mind, even though I know most people won't believe me. Hell, I'm not sure I believe it myself. It started like any other Thursday night shift. I'd been on the road since 6 p.m., making decent money with the usual mix of airport runs and bar hoppers. Around 2:30 a.m., I was thinking about calling it quits when one more ride request came through. The pickup location was in one of those older neighborhoods on the north side of town. You know the type. Big Victorian houses set back from the street, ancient oak trees making weird shadows under the streetlights. The app showed the passenger's name as John S. Generic enough. The rating was blank, which sometimes happens with new users. I probably should have paid more attention to that detail, but the surge pricing was good, and I figured one more ride couldn't hurt. I pulled up to the address, double-checking the house number in the dim light. 1879 Oakwood Drive. The house was dark except for a single porch light, its yellow glow barely reaching the crumbling concrete steps. I hit arrived on the app and waited. The night was dead quiet. No cars passing, no dogs barking, not even crickets. Just the tick-tick-tick of my cooling engine and the soft hum of the electric lines overhead. The temperature gauge on my dashboard showed 48 degrees, but I swear it felt colder. After about 2 minutes, I saw movement on the porch. A man stepped out of the shadows, and I mean that literally. 1 second there was nothing, and the next, he was just there. He was tall, maybe 6'2", wearing a dark suit that looked like something from an old movie. Not vintage hipster style, but actually old with wide lapels and a weird cut to it. His face was pale, almost gray in the porch light, and he had this thin mustache that nobody's worn since the 1940s. I usually get out to help passengers with their bags, but something kept me in my seat. Maybe it was the way he moved, too smooth, like he was gliding instead of walking. Or maybe it was his eyes. Even from 20 feet away through my windshield, I could see they were too dark, too deep. He opened the back passenger door without hesitation, like he'd done this 1,000 times. The car dipped slightly as he got in, which was somehow reassuring. At least he had physical weight. A blast of cold air hit the back of my neck, making the hair stand up. "Good evening," he said. His voice was deep but quiet, with an accent I couldn't place. Old-fashioned, like his suit. "Thank you for coming at this late hour." I glanced in the rearview mirror. His reflection was there, but something about it seemed off, like when you're looking at a 3D movie without the glasses, and everything's slightly blurred around the edges. "No problem," I said, trying to sound normal. "Where are we headed tonight?" He didn't answer immediately. In the mirror, I saw him straighten his tie with long, pale fingers. Evergreen Cemetery, he said finally. The old section, please. My stomach did a slow roll. Evergreen was clear across town, a good 30-minute drive at this time of night. And who goes to a cemetery at 3 a.m.? But the app had already registered the destination, and canceling now would hurt my rating. Sure thing, I said, pulling away from the curb. My headlights swept across the old house, and for a second, I thought I saw a face in one of the upper windows. But when I looked again, it was just darkness. The first 10 minutes of the drive were silent. Not the comfortable silence you sometimes get with tired passengers, but a heavy silence that seemed to press against my ears. The radio was playing quietly, some late-night talk show, but the sound seemed to stop at the front seats like there was an invisible wall between me and my passenger. I tried making conversation, which I don't usually do with late-night fares. You, work nights? You could say that. His voice seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. I keep unusual hours. In the mirror, he was staring straight ahead, his face expressionless. The streetlights we passed under should have moved shadows across his features, but somehow they didn't. We hit a red light, and I noticed the temperature had dropped even more. My breath was starting to fog in front of my face, even though the heater was running. I adjusted the controls, turning it up higher, but it didn't seem to make any difference. The streets were empty, which was normal for this time of night, but somehow it felt wrong, like we were the only car left in the world. We passed through downtown, the tall buildings looming over us, their windows dark and blank. My passenger hadn't moved or spoken again, but I could feel his presence behind me, like a weight pressing down on my shoulders. As we got closer to Evergreen, the streetlights became fewer and farther between. The road narrowed, lined with ancient trees that seemed to lean over the pavement, their branches reaching for each other overhead. My headlights caught glimpses of the iron fence that surrounded the cemetery, its spikes looking sharper than they should. The app directed me to the main entrance. The gates were closed, of course. Who opens a cemetery at 3 a.m.? I slowed down, wondering if I should ask for another destination. Stop here, my passenger said before I could speak. This will do fine. I pulled over to the curb, keeping the engine running. The fare total popped up on my phone, $47.83. I turned to ask if he wanted to pay through the app or... The back seat was empty. Not just empty. It looked like no one had ever sat there. No impression in the leather, no lingering warmth. Nothing. My hands were trembling as I turned around fully, checking the floor, the other seats. Empty. The doors were still locked. I always keep the child locks on during night shifts. The windows were up. There was no way he could have gotten out. I grabbed my phone, checking the ride details. The screen was blank. No passenger name, no destination, no fare. According to the app, I hadn't given any rides in the past hour. I sat there for what felt like hours but was probably only minutes, staring at the cemetery gates. The iron bars cast long shadows in my headlights, and beyond them, I could see the gravestones stretching away into darkness. Old ones, in the section he'd mentioned, their surfaces worn smooth by time. A movement caught my eye. Far back in the cemetery, past the first row of stones, something tall and dark was walking between the graves. Something in a suit with an old-fashioned cut. I watched until it disappeared into the shadows under a massive oak tree. The drive home was a blur. I took the longest route I could think of, sticking to well-lit main roads. I kept checking my mirrors, but the back seat stayed empty. The temperature gradually returned to normal, and by the time I pulled into my driveway, the radio was working properly again. I've been sitting here for 20 minutes now, trying to make sense of what happened. My logical mind keeps trying to find explanations. Maybe he slipped out somehow when I wasn't looking. Maybe I dozed off for a second and dreamed the whole thing. But I know what I saw, or didn't see. The sun will be up soon. I should try to get some sleep, but I know I won't be able to. Instead, I'm going to do some research. That house on Oakwood Drive, there has to be a history there. And maybe, if I'm brave enough, I'll drive by it again in daylight. But one thing's for certain, I'm done with late-night rides. From now on, my shift ends at midnight, no exceptions. And if I ever get another ride request from a John S. with a blank rating, I'm hitting decline faster than you can say surge pricing. I keep thinking about something my grandmother used to say: the darkest hour is just before dawn. She meant it as encouragement, but now I'm wondering if she knew something else, if she knew what or who comes out in those dark hours when most people are safely asleep in their beds. Tomorrow, I'll probably try to convince myself that this was all just stress and fatigue playing tricks on my mind. But right now, sitting in my quiet house with the porch light on and all the doors locked, I know better. I know that something impossible happened tonight, something that doesn't fit into my normal world of traffic patterns and star ratings and surge pricing. And somewhere in this city, in an old house on Oakwood Drive, there's a porch light burning in the darkness. Maybe right now another driver is pulling up to that address, checking their phone, waiting for a tall man in an old-fashioned suit to step out of the shadows. I should warn them. I should do something. But who would believe me? How do you report a ghost to a rideshare company? Passenger disappeared en route. Destination: cemetery. 1-star rating for scaring the hell out of me. The sky is starting to lighten outside my window. In a few hours, the city will wake up and the normal world will return. People will go to work, kids will go to school, and rideshare drivers will shuttle them all back and forth like always. But something has changed. Or maybe I've changed. Because now I know that when darkness falls, there's more out there than just drunk passengers and late-night food runs. There's another world running parallel to ours where the rules are different, where a man can step out of shadows and disappear into thin air, where a 30-minute drive can feel like an eternity, and where the destination might not be a place at all, but something else entirely. The coffee maker just kicked on. I set it last night in what feels like another lifetime. The familiar smell is filling the house, bringing me back to reality. My phone buzzes. Another ride request. Day shift is starting. I'm going to decline it. I need time to process what happened, to figure out what I'm going to do with this experience. Maybe I'll write it down properly, share it somewhere. Maybe someone else has picked up a passenger like mine, has driven through that same cold silence to a destination they'll never forget. Or maybe I'll keep it to myself, file it away with all the other strange stories that drift through this city in the hours before dawn. Either way, I know one thing for certain. The next time I drive past Evergreen Cemetery, I won't be slowing down, and I definitely won't be looking in my rearview mirror. The sun is up now, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. Time to try to get some sleep, even though I know my dreams will be filled with pale faces and dark suits, with empty back seats and cemetery gates. But that's okay, because in the daylight, even the strangest experiences fade to something manageable, something we can live with. Just, if you're ever driving late at night, and you get a request from a passenger named John S., do yourself a favor. Keep driving. Some rides aren't worth the fare, no matter how good the surge pricing might be. And if you find yourself on Oakwood Drive after midnight, don't look too hard at the shadows on that old porch. Sometimes the shadows look back. I first noticed it 3 weeks ago. A small thing. My reflection's eyes stayed fixed on me for half a second after I looked away. I blinked hard, looked again. Everything seemed normal, but that split-second delay stuck in my head. I'm not the type to dwell on weird little moments. I'm an accountant. I deal in numbers, spreadsheets, concrete things. I live alone in a one-bedroom apartment in Boston. My life runs on coffee, deadlines, and takeout. I don't read horror stories or watch scary movies. I don't look for hidden meanings or signs from the universe. But that moment with the mirror bothered me. It sat in the back of my mind like a stone in my shoe. Small, but impossible to ignore completely. The next time it happened, I was brushing my teeth before bed. I glanced down to spit in the sink, and when I looked back up, I caught my reflection still staring straight ahead for a heartbeat before matching my movement. My hand tightened on the toothbrush. Toothpaste dripped onto the counter. I told myself it was just tired eyes playing tricks, but it kept happening. Little moments where my reflection seemed to move just a fraction of a second too slow. or too fast. Sometimes when I walked past the bathroom mirror, I could swear my reflection's head turned to follow me before I actually turned to look. I started avoiding mirrors when possible. I shaved quickly, keeping my eyes down. I stopped fixing my hair, just ran a comb through it blind. My coworkers noticed. Sandra from accounting asked if I was sleeping okay. I told her I was fine. Then came the morning I couldn't avoid looking. I had an important client meeting. I needed to look presentable. I stood in front of the bathroom mirror, forcing myself to meet my reflection's eyes as I adjusted my tie. My reflection smiled. I wasn't smiling. My hands froze on my tie. Blood pounded in my ears. I watched my reflection's lips curl up while my own face remained frozen in shock. The smile grew wider than any normal smile should be. My reflection's eyes stayed locked on mine, unblinking. I stumbled backward, hitting the toilet tank. The back of my shirt got wet from condensation, but I barely noticed. My reflection stayed there, grinning, even though I was now 3 feet back from the mirror. I ran out of the bathroom, called in sick to work. Spent the day pacing my apartment, avoiding the bathroom door. That night, I covered the bathroom mirror with a towel. Used the mirror in my car's sun visor to fix my appearance for work the next day. But there are mirrors everywhere. Store windows, chrome elevator doors, the reflective panels in my office lobby. Every glimpse of my reflection made my stomach clench, because now I could see the differences, the slight delay in movements. The way my reflection's eyes would slide toward me before I turned my head, the ghost of that terrible smile playing around the edges of its mouth. I started taking the stairs instead of the elevator, kept my eyes down when passing windows, used the bathroom stalls at work instead of the ones with mirrors. People definitely noticed now. My boss called me into his office to ask if everything was all right. I mumbled something about stress and personal issues. He suggested taking some vacation days. I almost did, but the thought of being alone in my apartment all day, knowing what waited behind that bathroom towel, was worse than being at work. The next phase started a week ago. I woke up at 3 a.m. needing to pee. Stumbled to the bathroom half asleep, forgot about the towel, flicked on the light, and there was my reflection, already standing there, awake, waiting, grinning that impossibly wide grin. I jerked back, but it stayed, pressed against its side of the mirror, watching me. Its clothes were the same as mine, white t-shirt, gray sweatpants, but its stance was wrong. Shoulders too straight for someone who just woke up. Head tilted at an angle that made my neck ache just looking at it. My bladder forgotten, I backed away. My reflection stayed in the mirror. Standing, watching, grinning. I could see the bathroom wall behind it, but it wasn't moving with me anymore. It had become its own thing. I slept on my couch that night with all the lights on. Called in sick again the next day. Ordered a black plastic garbage bag and duct tape from Amazon with same-day delivery. Covered the mirror completely, but now I can hear it at night. Soft tapping from the bathroom, like fingernails on glass. Sometimes I think I hear whispers, but when I strain to listen, it's just the hum of my refrigerator or traffic outside. The tapping is getting louder though, more insistent. Last night I woke up to a long, slow squeak, like someone dragging their hand down glass. I put in earplugs, turned on music, but I could still feel it. Feel eyes on me through the wall, through the plastic, through the dark. I haven't slept more than an hour at a time in 3 days. My hands shake constantly. I've lost weight. My clothes hang loose. The dark circles under my eyes make me look like I've been punched. Not that I look in mirrors anymore to check. Yesterday I caught a glimpse of myself in a window at work, except it wasn't me. My reflection was pressed against the glass, hands splayed out, that grin stretching literally from ear to ear. Its eyes were totally black. I saw a coworker walk past in the reflection, completely normal, while my distorted double stayed fixed in place. I dropped my coffee, made a scene. My boss sent me home again, suggested I talk to someone, get help. But who would believe me? What would I even say? My reflection is trying to get out of the mirror. They'd lock me up, so I sit here on my couch writing this on my phone. The tapping from the bathroom is constant now. Sometimes it sounds like knocking, sometimes like scratching. The plastic bag over the mirror bulges outward slightly like something's pressing against it. I've pushed my couch against my front door, wedged chairs under all the doorknobs, covered every reflective surface I can find. But there's still the windows. The TV screen when it's turned off. The screen of my phone when it goes dark. I catch glimpses in each one, quick flashes of that grin, those black eyes. Sometimes just a hand pressed against the other side of the glass. Waiting. My phone's at 20% battery. I can't plug it in because the outlet is near a window. The tapping is getting louder. The plastic on the mirror is stretched tight now, like a drum. I've thought about running, but where would I go? There are mirrors everywhere, windows everywhere, screens everywhere, and it's in all of them now. Waiting, watching, grinning. The worst part is I'm starting to grin back. Not because I want to, but my face muscles keep twitching, pulling, like something is tugging on strings under my skin, trying to match that horrible smile. I catch myself practicing the tilt of its head sometimes, that unnatural angle. My neck cracks when I do it, but I can't seem to stop, like my body is rehearsing, preparing. The building manager called earlier. Neighbors complained about noise from my bathroom. Tapping, scratching. A weird squealing sound like nails on glass. I told him I'd call a plumber. He seemed suspicious. My boss texted, said I need to come in tomorrow, or we need to have a serious talk about my employment. I started to type a response, but my reflection appeared in the dark phone screen. Grinning. Always grinning. I threw the phone across the room. I went to pick it up just now. Had to. Need to keep writing. Keep documenting. But when I turned it over, my reflection wasn't mine anymore. The face was similar, but stretched somehow. Features just slightly wrong. That smile now full of too many teeth. The scratching from the bathroom is changing. Sounds more like digging now, like something trying to get through. The plastic bag is torn in places. I can see flashes of silver behind it. Moving, shifting. My hands won't stop shaking. Keep mistyping. Face muscles twitching worse now. Neck keeps wanting to tilt at that angle. Sometimes I catch myself standing too straight. Too still. Like it does. Maybe I should just leave. Start driving. But which way do I look? The windows are everywhere. The screens are everywhere. And it's in all of them now. All of them showing that twisted version of my face. Those black eyes. That impossible smile. The bathroom door just creaked open. I didn't open it. The plastic is hanging in shreds now. I can hear something moving. Something breathing. My phone screen just went dark again. But the reflection isn't mine anymore. The face looking back at me is the right shape finally. The right angle. The right smile. My neck doesn't hurt anymore when I tilt my head like this. I think I understand now. It wasn't trying to get out. It was teaching me how to get in. I'm going to set down my phone now. Walk to the bathroom. Look in the mirror properly, I think. I think I finally know how to smile correctly. How to stand correctly. How to be correctly. Everything will be fine once I get the angles right. Once I learn to press against the glass just so. Once I perfect the smile. I just need to practice in front of the mirror a bit more. Just a bit more. Just... The radio sat there covered in decades of dust, its wooden cabinet dulled by time. I found it while cleaning out my grandparents' basement in their old Milwaukee house. The musty smell of mold and aged paper filled my nostrils as I wiped off the thick layer of grime with my sleeve. My grandfather had been a collector of old electronics, and this one looked like it dated back to the 1940s. I noticed the power cord seemed intact, without any obvious fraying or damage. The urge to plug it in hit me immediately. I knew it probably wouldn't work after sitting down here for God knows how many years, but curiosity got the better of me. I cleared some space on a nearby workbench, brushed away some cobwebs, and found an outlet. The cord felt stiff but solid as I plugged it in. The radio's dial light flickered weakly to life, casting a faint amber glow in the dim basement. My heart rate picked up slightly. I hadn't actually expected it to show any signs of life. I turned the volume knob and heard the distinctive crackle of static. The tuning dial moved smoothly as I began scanning through frequencies. Static, more static, different pitches of static. I was about to give up when suddenly a clear voice cut through. "This message is for Michael Barrett." I froze. That was my name. The voice continued, female and professionally neutral like a news anchor. "Michael, I know you're listening. This is not a coincidence. You need to pay attention to what I'm about to tell you." My hand started shaking on the dial. I pulled it back and wiped my sweaty palm on my jeans. The basement suddenly felt 10 degrees colder. "Your wife Sarah is in danger. Not immediate danger, but something is coming. I can't tell you exactly what or when. There are rules about these things. But I can give you information that will help you prevent it." My throat went dry. Sarah was at work right now teaching her third-grade class. We'd been married for 5 years. Everything was normal, wasn't it? First instruction: check your circuit breaker box today. You'll find evidence of an electrical problem that needs immediate attention. This is step 1. I grabbed my phone and started recording. The voice continued. "Second, that pain Sarah's been having in her left knee? Make sure she gets it checked out. Not by Dr. Matthews, he'll miss what's wrong. She needs to see Dr. Susan Chen at Milwaukee General, specifically her. Sarah had been complaining about her knee for a few weeks. She'd blamed it on running too much. We hadn't even discussed seeing a doctor yet. Third, within the next month, someone will try to sell you a cabin rental up north for a weekend getaway. The price will seem too good to be true. Don't take it." The voice paused. Static crackled. My hands were trembling as I adjusted the tuning slightly to maintain the clear signal. "I know you have questions. I know this seems impossible, but you need to trust me. Your grandfather trusted me when I warned him in 1962, and it saved your grandmother's life. Ask your mother about the car accident that almost happened." My breath caught in my throat. I'd never heard anything about this. I can't explain who I am or how I know these things, but I am here to help. There will be more messages, same time tomorrow. 2:17 p.m., don't be late. The voice cut out. Static rushed in to fill the silence. I tried adjusting the dial, but the voice was gone. I checked my phone's recording. It had captured everything. I sat on a dusty box, my heart pounding. The rational part of my brain screamed that this was impossible, that I was imagining things or this was some elaborate prank, but I couldn't shake the raw fear that crept through my body. The voice had known too many specific details. My phone showed 2:19 p.m. I needed to get home and check that circuit breaker box. Then I needed to call my mother and ask about a car accident that never happened in 1962. And somehow, I had to figure out how to convince Sarah to see a specific doctor she'd never heard of about a knee problem she hadn't even decided to have checked yet. I looked at the radio. Its amber dial light glowed steadily in the basement gloom. I couldn't leave it here. I wrapped the power cord around its wooden case and lifted it carefully. It felt heavy, solid, real. That night, I couldn't sleep. Sarah noticed my distraction during dinner, but I deflected her questions. How could I possibly explain what had happened? I lay in bed listening to her steady breathing beside me, my mind racing. I had checked the circuit breaker box that afternoon. Sure enough, I found scorch marks around one of the breakers, signs of a dangerous short circuit waiting to happen. An electrician was coming tomorrow morning. My mother had been shocked when I called about the accident. "Who told you about that?" she'd demanded. She confirmed that in 1962 my grandfather had abruptly canceled a planned road trip. The next day, a massive pileup occurred on their intended route. My grandmother would have been driving that stretch of highway exactly when it happened. When I pressed for details about why they canceled, My mother grew quiet. Dad never really explained, she said. He just insisted we couldn't go, said he had a strong feeling about it. The next day, I made sure to be in the basement at 2:10 p.m., the radio set up and ready. My hands were sweating as I watched the minutes tick by on my phone. At exactly 2:17, I turned it on and tuned to the same frequency as yesterday. The voice came through immediately. Michael Barrett. Good. You followed the first instruction about the circuit breaker. That's going to prevent a fire next month. Now we need to talk about Sarah's knee again. Have you convinced her to see Dr. Chen yet? No, I said out loud, feeling foolish talking to a radio. She doesn't want to see a doctor at all yet. You need to insist. I know it's difficult without explaining why, but this is important. Dr. Chen will find early signs of a treatable condition. If left unchecked, it becomes much more serious. You have 2 weeks before the damage starts becoming permanent. My stomach clenched. What condition? What's wrong with her? I can't tell you that. It would change too many variables. Just get her to Dr. Chen. Now, your next instruction. Check the tire pressure in Sarah's car tomorrow morning. The front right tire is dangerously low. This isn't related to the bigger danger I warned you about, but it needs addressing. I wrote everything down frantically. The voice continued. You're struggling with whether to tell Sarah about these messages. Don't. Not yet. The time will come when you can explain everything, but right now she needs to make certain decisions without this knowledge influencing her. Trust me on this. Static crackled through briefly, then cleared. One more thing for today. Start keeping detailed notes about every message. You'll need them later. Tomorrow, same time. And Michael, thank you for trusting me. The voice cut out. I sat back, running my hands through my hair. The notes on my phone stared back at me. Check tire pressure. Convince Sarah to see Dr. Chen. Don't tell her why. I felt like I was going crazy. But the circuit breaker had been real. The story about my grandparents had been real. I couldn't ignore these messages, no matter how impossible they seemed. The next week fell into a pattern. Every day at 2:17, I'd sit in the basement with the radio. Every day, the voice would give me new instructions or warnings. Some seemed trivial. Avoid a certain intersection on Tuesday afternoon. Buy a specific brand of fire extinguisher. Check the expiration dates on our emergency supplies. Others were more significant. The voice warned me about a coming problem with our home's foundation that would be expensive if not caught early. It told me which stocks to invest in for a crucial short-term gain we'd need later. It predicted exactly when our water heater would fail and told me which model to replace it with. Each prediction came true. Each piece of advice proved sound. I followed them all religiously, while trying to maintain a facade of normalcy with Sarah and everyone else in my life. Sarah did eventually agree to see Dr. Chen after I practically begged her. I couldn't tell her why it had to be that specific doctor, but I insisted until she gave in. Dr. Chen found early signs of a rare inflammatory condition that could have caused permanent joint damage if left untreated. The treatment was simple, but only if caught early. Sarah was surprised but grateful. She asked how I'd heard of Dr. Chen. I mumbled something about online reviews. The hardest part was keeping everything secret. I felt the weight of it constantly. Sarah knew something was off with me. I caught her watching me with concern when she thought I wasn't looking. Our conversations felt strained. I hated lying to her, even by omission. The voice had said I couldn't tell her yet, but when would it be time? How long could I keep this up? 3 weeks after finding the radio, I got my answer. Michael Barrett, the voice said at our usual time. You've done well following all the instructions. Today is different. Today I'm going to tell you about the danger to Sarah and why all of this has been necessary. I pressed record on my phone with trembling fingers. 2 months from now, Sarah will be offered a position as principal at a new private school opening across town. The salary will be twice what she makes now. The opportunity will seem perfect. It will also be a trap. I leaned closer to the radio, hanging on every word. The school is a front for something else. I can't tell you exactly what. Those details are protected. But taking that job would pull Sarah into a situation that would destroy both your lives. The people behind it are dangerous, not in obvious ways, but in subtle legal ways that are just as destructive. Static crackled through. I adjusted the tuning carefully. Everything we've done so far has been preparation. The financial moves, the home repairs, the medical intervention, all of it designed to put you in a position where Sarah won't need to take that job, where you'll be stable enough to weather what's coming. My mouth felt dry. How do I stop her from taking it? You don't. She needs to make that choice herself. But now you can tell her everything. Show her your notes. Play her the recordings. Let her hear this message. She needs to understand the reality of what she's dealing with, so she can make an informed decision when the time comes. I sank back in my chair, relief flooding through me. Finally. One last thing, the voice said. After today, you won't hear from me again. The radio will only play normal broadcasts from now on. Its purpose will be fulfilled. Wait, I said quickly. Who are you? Why help us? The voice was silent for a moment. Then, let's just say I'm returning a favor. Your grandfather helped me once long ago. This completes the circle. Goodbye, Michael Barrett. Take care of Sarah. Static filled the basement. I tried adjusting the dial, but I knew it was finished. The presence I'd felt through the radio for these past weeks was gone. That evening, I told Sarah everything. I showed her all my notes, played the recordings, demonstrated how normal radio stations now came through the old radio. She sat in silence as I talked, her face unreadable. When I finished, she was quiet for a long time. Finally, she said, I believe you. I stared at her. You do? She nodded slowly. It explains so much about how you've been acting. And she hesitated. The thing about Dr. Chen and my knee, there's no way you could have known about that condition. No way anyone could have known without very specific tests. She squeezed my hand. I know you. You wouldn't make this up, and you wouldn't have kept it from me without a good reason. 2 months later, Sarah was approached about the principal position, exactly as predicted. The offer was perfect, just as the voice had said. Too perfect. Sarah declined immediately. The man making the offer pressed hard, making the deal even sweeter. Sarah stayed firm. Later that week, we drove past the address where the school was supposed to be opening. The building was empty, with no signs of renovation or preparation. A month after that, we read in the paper about an investment scheme that had targeted several local private schools. The new school would have been part of it. If Sarah had taken the job, her name would have been tied to the fraud. Her career in education would have been ruined. The radio sits in our living room now. It plays normal stations, just like any other radio. Sometimes I catch Sarah looking at it thoughtfully, but we rarely talk about those strange weeks. We don't need to. We both know what happened was real. I think about the voice sometimes and about my grandfather, wondering what he did to earn such a powerful ally. But mostly, I'm just grateful. Grateful for the warnings, grateful for the chance to prevent disaster, and grateful that I no longer have to carry the secret alone. Sarah and I are closer than ever now. Whatever force spoke through that radio gave us more than just protection from danger. It gave us an incredible shared experience, a private miracle that reminded us how precious and strange life can be. We don't know if we'll ever face another threat like the one we avoided, but we know we'll face it together. The radio keeps playing music and news day after day. Just an old wooden box with some vacuum tubes and wires inside. But sometimes late at night I could swear I see that amber dial light pulse just a little brighter, like a distant star winking at a secret. The footprints appeared on January 12th. I know the exact date because I'd just finished my monthly call with my insurance agent about the roof damage from the last storm. I saw them from my office window at 6:42 p.m., a line of deep impressions in the fresh snow circling my house. They hadn't been there an hour ago. The strange part wasn't just their sudden appearance. It was that they formed a perfect circle around the entire house, with no tracks leading to or away from the ring, as if someone had been dropped from the sky. I pressed my face against the cold window glass, my breath fogging the pain. The footprints were large, definitely made by boots, not shoes. They sank deep into the 8 inches of powder that had fallen steadily since morning. I followed their path with my eyes, leaning so close my forehead touched the freezing surface. The tracks maintained an exact distance of about 3 feet from my foundation all the way around. No deviation, no hesitation, just a mechanical precision that made my skin prickle. My phone buzzed. I jumped, heart racing, and grabbed it from my desk. Just a text from my sister asking about Mom's birthday next week. I started to reply but stopped, distracted by movement in my peripheral vision. I snapped my head up, scanning the yard. Nothing moved except the lazy drift of snowflakes catching the security lights. The rational part of my brain kicked in. There had to be an explanation. Maybe someone from the power company checking the meter. But they always came to the front door first, and these prints never approached the house. A prankster. The snow was pristine, except for that single line of footprints. They would have had to levitate to avoid leaving tracks to and from the circle. I pulled out my phone again and dialed the local police non-emergency number. Officer Martinez answered, and I explained what I was seeing, feeling slightly foolish. "Have you gone outside to investigate, Mr. Chen?" she asked. "No, I've been watching from my window." "Probably smart. Stay inside and lock your doors. I'll send a patrol car to check it out." I thanked her and hung up. My house suddenly felt very exposed with its walls of windows, modern architecture that had seemed so appealing when I bought the place last year. I moved through each room, drawing blinds and curtains. The sun had fully set now, leaving me in pools of artificial light that made the darkness outside seem deeper. 20 minutes later, red and blue lights flashed in my driveway. I watched through a gap in the living room curtains as 2 officers emerged from their cruiser, flashlights sweeping across the yard. They circled the house slowly, stopping frequently to examine the prints. One took photos, while the other measured the depth and spacing with a ruler. The doorbell rang. I checked the security camera feed on my phone before opening it. Officer Martinez stood on my porch with her partner, snow dusting their dark uniforms. "Evening, Mr. Chen. I'm Officer Martinez. We spoke on the phone. This is Officer Reynolds. Mind if we come in?" I stepped back to let them enter, noticing they carefully wiped their boots on the mat. Small courtesy, but it helped settle my nerves somehow. Normal people doing normal things. "Those are some unusual tracks out there," Martinez said, pulling out a notepad. "When exactly did you first notice them?" I told them the timeline while Reynolds prowled the perimeter of my living room, peering out windows. "The prints are consistent all the way around," he reported. "Same depth, same stride length. Whatever made them was maintaining a very steady pace." "Whatever?" I asked, not liking his word choice. Martinez shot him a look. "We have no reason to think this is anything other than human activity, Mr. Chen. But we are concerned about someone circling residences in this weather. There have been a few break-ins lately where burglars used the snow cover to mask their approach." They took my statement and promised to increase patrols in the area. After they left, I double-checked every lock and activated the security system. The house felt too quiet. I turned on the TV for background noise and tried to focus on work, but my eyes kept drifting to the windows. At midnight, I finally gave up pretending to be productive. I needed sleep, but my bedroom was on the ground floor with windows facing the backyard. After some hesitation, I grabbed blankets and my laptop and headed upstairs to the guest room. The elevation gave me a better view of the property anyway. I lay in bed watching the security camera feeds on my laptop. The snow had stopped and moonlight reflected blindingly off the white ground. The footprints stood out as sharp shadows in the pale expanse. Nothing moved. No new tracks appeared. Around 2 a.m., my eyes grew too heavy to keep open. The crunch of snow jolted me awake. I sat up, heart pounding, unsure if I'd really heard anything. The laptop had gone to sleep, its screen black. As I reached for it, another crunch, deliberate, heavy. right below my window. I froze, barely breathing. Another step, and another. Slow, measured footfalls circling the house. I wanted to look but couldn't make myself move to the window. The steps continued their steady pace. Crunch, pause, until they completed the circuit and started again. My hand shook as I woke the laptop and pulled up the camera feeds. Nothing. The yard was empty, the original tracks undisturbed, but I could still hear the footsteps, clear as a hammer on an anvil, making their endless loop. I fumbled for my phone and called Martinez's direct line that she'd left me. "Do you hear that?" I whispered when she answered. "Hear what, Mr. Chen?" Her voice was sharp, professional. "Someone's walking around my house. I can hear the footsteps in the snow. I'm sending units now. Are you in a secure location?" "Upstairs guest room. Doors and windows are locked." "Stay there. Officers are 4 minutes out." The footsteps continued their measured pace as I waited. I counted the circuits, 3 complete circles around the house. Then they stopped. The silence felt worse somehow. Police lights again reflected off the snow. Martinez herself had responded with 3 other officers. They found no fresh prints, no disturbance of the original tracks. Their own footprints broke the pristine surface as they searched the property with guns drawn. "Could you have been dreaming?" Martinez asked gently after they completed their sweep. I started to protest but stopped. Could I have? The sound had been so real, but the untouched snow argued otherwise. "Maybe," I conceded. "It's been a strange night." She left an officer parked in my driveway for the remainder of the night. I didn't sleep, but I didn't hear the footsteps again either. Morning brought weak winter sunlight and a fresh skiff of snow that softened the edges of the original prints, but didn't fill them. I called in sick to work. I couldn't face leaving the house with those tracks still out there. Instead, I spent the morning Googling everything I could think of about mysterious footprints. I found plenty of folklore and conspiracy theories, but nothing that matched my situation exactly. Around noon, my doorbell rang. I checked the camera. Martinez again, in civilian clothes this time. "Thought I'd stop by on my lunch break," she said when I let her in. "How are you holding up?" "Honestly, not great. Keep feeling like I'm either crazy or being watched. Neither option is comforting." She nodded. "Mind if I look around again? Sometimes daylight shows things we miss at night." I gestured for her to go ahead. She moved through the house methodically, examining locks and sightlines. In my office, she paused at the window where I'd first seen the prints. "Tell me exactly what happened when you noticed them," she said. I walked her through the sequence again. As I described checking the phone message from my sister, she held up her hand. "Wait, you said you were on the phone with your insurance agent about roof damage?" "Yeah, from the storm last week. Why? Did anyone come out to inspect it?" "No, they're backed up with claims, supposed to send someone next week." She pulled out her phone and dialed. "This is Detective Martinez, badge number 8149. I need to know if you have any adjusters or inspectors working in the Oakwood Hills area." She listened, then asked for a specific name. Her expression hardened as she ended the call. "Your insurance company has no adjusters scheduled for this neighborhood. The person you spoke to wasn't from them." My stomach dropped. Then who? Someone gathering information, testing response times, learning routines. She was already moving, checking angles from windows to the street. They called to confirm you were home, then circled the house looking for entry points. The prints were meant to unsettle you, make you doubt yourself. Classic intimidation tactic. But why me? You live alone in an isolated house with good visibility of the approaches. You work from home most days according to neighbors. Regular schedule, minimal traffic. Plus, she gestured at my office setup. 3 monitors, high-end equipment, signs of money. She pulled out her phone again. "I'm calling in surveillance. We'll put cameras on the perimeter and..." She stopped, staring out the window. "Did you see that?" I moved to look. A figure in white winter camouflage stood at the tree line watching us. As soon as we spotted it, it turned and walked into the woods. Martinez ran for the door, drawing her weapon. Lock up behind me. I heard her car start as I hit the deadbolt. Through the window, I watched her fishtail down my snow-covered driveway in pursuit. My phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. Nice to finally meet you, Mr. Chen. See you again soon. I deleted it with shaking hands and called 911. Within minutes, my quiet street filled with police vehicles. They found Martinez's car at the end of the logging road, driver's door open, engine running. Her footprints led into the trees following another set of tracks. Both trails ended abruptly at a plowed service road where tire tracks showed a vehicle had been waiting. The police set up a command post in my driveway. Detectives interviewed me for hours about every detail of the past 24 hours. They pulled security footage from neighboring houses, but the cameras had all gone dark for exactly 17 minutes the previous evening, the window when the footprints must have appeared. As darkness fell, they installed motion sensors and cameras around my property. 2 officers would be stationed outside round the clock. They offered to put me in a hotel, but I refused. This was my home. I wouldn't be driven out by fear. That night I sat in my office, lights off, watching the yard through night vision cameras. The snow reflected dull green through the infrared filter. Officers paced their assigned routes, checking in by radio every 15 minutes. At exactly midnight, my monitors went black. Backup power kicked in immediately, but those few seconds of darkness sent my pulse racing. As the screens flickered back to life, my phone lit up with a new text. Watching you watch me. Fun, isn't it? I forwarded it to the detective in charge and forced myself to keep scanning the cameras. Nothing moved in the yard except the patrolling officers. Hours crept by. My eyes burned from staring at screens. Just before dawn, movement caught my attention. A white-clad figure stood in my driveway facing the house. The officers were nowhere in sight. As I watched, it raised a hand and waved almost playfully. Then it turned and walked away, leaving no tracks in the fresh snow. The officers were found in their car, unconscious but unharmed. They remembered nothing after their 3 a.m. radio check. The cameras showed only static during that period. No prints, no evidence, just another taunt. This has been my life for the past week. Police presence, surveillance equipment, endless questions. No more footprints have appeared. No direct threats. Just the certainty that someone is watching, testing, waiting. Martinez hasn't been found. The white figure hasn't been seen again. I sit in my office each night, monitoring cameras, analyzing patterns. The police tell me to sleep, to let them handle it. But I can't stop watching. Because I know now, those first footprints weren't meant to frighten me. They were an introduction, a calling card, a promise of things to come. Tonight the snow is falling again, thick and silent. My screens show empty whiteness. I'm watching, waiting. The game continues, and I'm still learning the rules. But I won't be the one who blinks first. Let them watch. Let them test. I'll be ready when they finally make their move. For now, the snow falls, covering all traces, and somewhere out there, someone is planning their next step in this strange dance we've begun. But this time, I'm not afraid. This time I'm hunting them too. I didn't want to open the shower door. My hand gripped the metal handle and I stood frozen, staring at the blurred figure behind the frosted glass. It wasn't moving, just standing there. I'd been alone in this hotel room for the past 3 days, and I was definitely alone when I went into the bathroom 5 minutes ago. The figure remained motionless, a dark smudge against the white glass. My heart pounded against my ribs. Sweat formed on my palms, making the handle slippery. The bathroom fan hummed overhead, and water dripped from the leaky sink faucet. Drip, drip, drip. I cleared my throat. Hello? My voice cracked. No response. The rational part of my brain kicked in. I'm on the 20th floor of the Marriott in downtown Chicago. No one could have entered through the window. The door was locked and deadbolted with the security latch engaged. I'd checked it 3 times before going to bed like I always do. I took a deep breath and yanked the shower door open. Empty. Just white tile walls, a chrome shower head, and a small bottle of hotel shampoo on the corner shelf. The shower curtain hung limp and still. No one was there. My shoulders sagged with relief. Just my imagination playing tricks. Too many late nights working on this merger deal. Too much coffee, too little sleep. I turned to leave, but something caught my eye in the mirror above the sink. The glass was completely fogged up, which was strange because I hadn't taken a shower yet. In the center of the mist, someone had written, "Don't sign the contract." The words were crude, drawn with a finger through the condensation. Drops of water rolled down from the letters, leaving trails like tears. I stumbled backward, hitting the toilet tank with my hip. Pain shot through my side, but I barely noticed it. The message was impossible. I'd told no one at the hotel why I was here. The merger documents were locked in my briefcase. Even my wife thought I was just on a routine business trip. I grabbed a hand towel and wiped the mirror clean. The message disappeared, leaving only streaks on the glass. My reflection stared back at me. Pale face, dark circles under my eyes, 3 days of stubble on my chin. I looked like hell. The merger signing was scheduled for 10 a.m. tomorrow morning. After 2 years of negotiations, Riverside Manufacturing would finally be absorbed into Global Dynamics. The deal would make the shareholders rich. It would make me rich. My bonus alone would pay off our mortgage. But something felt wrong about the whole thing. Little discrepancies in the financial reports that nobody could explain. Key employees at Riverside quitting suddenly in the past month. The rushed timeline for closing the deal. I splashed cold water on my face and gripped the edges of the sink. Get it together. There's no one in here. No one could have written that message. I'm just stressed and seeing things. The bathroom fan clicked off. The sudden silence felt heavy, pressing against my ears. Then I heard it. Soft footsteps in the bedroom. I whirled around. The bathroom door was still closed. I'd left it open when I came in. My throat went dry. "Who's there?" I called out, trying to sound authoritative instead of terrified. No answer. Just more footsteps moving closer to the bathroom door. I looked around frantically for a weapon. The best I could find was the metal tissue box holder bolted to the wall. I yanked at it, but it wouldn't budge. The footsteps stopped right outside the door. I backed up against the far wall, next to the shower. My hands clenched into fists. If someone was really out there, I'd have to fight. 20 stories up, there was nowhere to run. The door handle turned slowly. I held my breath. It opened an inch, then stopped. Through the crack, I could see only darkness. The bedroom lights were off. I distinctly remembered leaving them on. "Show yourself," I shouted. My voice echoed off the bathroom tiles. The door swung open the rest of the way. No one was there, just the dark hotel room beyond. I stayed pressed against the wall, eyes darting around the bathroom. The mirror had fogged up again. New words appeared as if an invisible finger was writing them. "Check the server room." I knew exactly what that meant. The secure server room in Riverside's headquarters contained all their proprietary data, customer information, and trade secrets. I'd never been inside. It was off limits during due diligence. Global's tech team was scheduled to integrate the systems after the merger closed. My phone was on the bedside table. I needed to call someone. The police, hotel security, anyone. But I had to cross the dark bedroom to get to it. I took a tentative step toward the door. The bathroom light flickered once, twice, then went out. Total darkness. I couldn't even see my hand in front of my face. The air felt suddenly cold, raising goosebumps on my arms. I heard breathing. Not my own panicked gasps, but slow, deliberate breaths coming from the shower behind me. I bolted. Ran straight through the darkness, banging my shin on something hard, probably the bed frame. I kept going until I hit the wall next to the room door. My fingers found the light switch and I flipped it on. The bedroom lit up. Everything was normal. Bed slightly rumpled but empty. Briefcase still locked and sitting on the desk. My phone on the nightstand where I'd left it. I limped to the bathroom door and flicked that switch too. Light flooded the small space. Empty. The mirror was clear, no trace of fog or writing. The shower door stood open, revealing nothing but clean white tile. My hands shook as I grabbed my phone. Who could I even call? What would I say? I saw a ghost who warned me about a corporate merger. They'd think I was crazy or drunk. I sat heavily on the bed, rubbing my bruised shin. The bedside clock read 3:17 a.m. In less than 7 hours, I was supposed to be in a conference room signing papers that would finalize the merger. The smart thing would be to forget this whole incident. Lack of sleep, stress, an overactive imagination, that's all it was. Sign the papers, collect my bonus, move on with my life. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something was very wrong. The message about the server room kept repeating in my mind. I pulled out my laptop and logged into my work email. Scrolling back through months of merger documentation, I found what I was looking for, the IT systems audit report. I'd only skimmed it before, trusting our tech team's assessment that everything was fine. This time I read every word carefully. Most of it was standard corporate jargon about network architecture and security protocols, but one section caught my eye. Access to secure server room 3B restricted due to ongoing maintenance. Remote system audit performed on backup servers only. They'd never actually inspected the main servers. The entire technical evaluation of Riverside's most sensitive systems was based on backup data that could have been manipulated. I dug deeper, pulling up personnel records. In the past month, Riverside's head of IT security had resigned suddenly, along with 2 senior system administrators. All 3 had signed extensive non-disclosure agreements as part of their separation packages. My mouth went dry as the implications hit me. If someone wanted to hide something, unauthorized data collection, financial fraud, corporate espionage, the server room would be the place to do it. I got up and paced the room, mind racing. The merger agreement had strict liability provisions. If significant illegal activity was discovered after closing, Global would be on the hook for hundreds of millions in damages and penalties. The shareholders would be wiped out. My career would be over. But I had no proof. Just suspicious circumstances and a warning from, what? A ghost? A hallucination? I'd sound insane if I tried to stop the merger based on that. The air conditioning kicked on with a loud whir, making me jump. I walked to the window and looked out at the Chicago skyline. The city was never truly dark, even at this hour. Points of light stretched to the horizon, office buildings where other people were probably working late, making their own questionable decisions. My reflection appeared dimly in the window glass. For a moment, I thought I saw another face superimposed over mine. Gaunt, hollow-eyed, warning. I jerked back, but it was gone. The smart move was to sign the papers, take the money and run. Whatever was happening at Riverside would become someone else's problem. But I knew I wouldn't sleep until I found out the truth. I changed into fresh clothes, grabbed my briefcase, and headed for the door. Then I stopped, turned around, walked back to the bathroom. The mirror was still clear. I leaned close and breathed on it, creating a small circle of fog. "Who are you?" I wrote with my finger. The fog expanded, spreading across the glass. Letters appeared. Someone who made the wrong choice. I waited, but there was nothing more. The fog faded, taking the words with it. 20 minutes later, I pulled into the parking lot of Riverside Manufacturing's headquarters. The security guard at the gate recognized me from my previous visits and waved me through with barely a glance at my visitor badge. The building was mostly dark, but a few lights burned in scattered windows. The night cleaning crew, probably. I used my temporary access card to enter through a side door, then took the elevator to the 4th floor where the server room was located. The hallway was silent, except for the soft hum of fluorescent lights. My footsteps echoed on the tile floor as I approached room 3B. A keypad lock protected the door. I hadn't been given the code, but I had something better. The master key fob I'd lifted from the security guard's desk during my last site visit. A violation of about 12 different corporate policies, but I'd figured it might come in handy. I held my breath as I touched the fob to the reader. The light turned green. The lock clicked open. The server room was smaller than I expected, maybe 20 feet square. Rows of black metal racks held blinking servers, cooling fans whirring softly. The air was cold, heavy with the smell of electronics. I pulled out my phone and opened the camera app. Whatever I found, I'd need evidence. The first few racks contained normal corporate servers, email, file storage, accounting systems. But in the back corner, partially hidden behind a partition, I found something different. A cluster of high-end servers connected to what looked like a data collection hub, the kind used for mass surveillance and data mining. I took photos of the equipment and serial numbers. Then I noticed something else, network cables running up through the ceiling. I followed them with my flashlight beam. They disappeared into a panel marked Building Management Systems. But this setup had nothing to do with managing the building. Someone had tapped into every electronic system in the facility. Phones, computers, security cameras, even the card readers on the doors. Everything that happened here was being recorded and analyzed. The implications were staggering. Corporate espionage on a massive scale. They weren't just spying on their own employees. They were collecting data on everyone who entered the building. Customers, suppliers, contractors, including the Global Dynamics merger team. My hands shook as I took more photos. Our confidential negotiations, strategic plans, internal discussions. They had it all. No wonder they were rushing to close the deal. Once the merger went through, they'd have inside access to Global's entire operation. A door slammed somewhere in the building. I froze, listening. Footsteps echoed in the hallway, getting closer. I switched off my flashlight and pressed myself against the wall behind the server racks. The footsteps stopped outside the door. A key card beeped. The door opened. Light spilled in from the hallway. A figure entered. Tall, wearing a maintenance uniform. But the way he moved wasn't like a maintenance worker. Too purposeful. Too alert. He walked directly to the surveillance servers and began typing on a laptop connected to the system. From my hiding spot, I could see the screen. He was running some kind of deletion program, destroying evidence. My phone chose that moment to vibrate, an incoming email. The sound was tiny, barely audible over the server fans. The man's head snapped up. He reached under his jacket and pulled out a gun. "Come out," he said quietly. "Now." I stayed frozen, barely breathing. Maybe he wasn't sure where the sound came from. "I won't ask again." He started moving between the server racks, gun extended. I had seconds to decide, fight or run. I chose run. I burst from behind the rack and sprinted for the door. A shot cracked behind me, deafening in the small room. Something sparked off a metal cabinet near my head. I slammed through the door and ran down the hallway. Another shot. I dodged around a corner just as it hit the wall where I'd been. The elevator was too slow. I found the stairs and took them 3 at a time, half falling down the flights. My pursuer's footsteps thundered above me. I crashed through the stairwell door into the lobby. The security guard was nowhere to be seen. I sprinted for the exit, fumbling for my car keys. The glass doors loomed ahead, almost there. Pain exploded in my shoulder as something hit me from behind. I stumbled but kept going, burst through the doors into the cool night air. My car was 30 yards away. I could hear him behind me, closing fast. The keys slipped from my sweaty fingers. I snatched them up and jerked the door open, diving inside. The engine roared to life. I slammed it into reverse just as my pursuer reached for the door handle. The car leapt backward, making him jump aside. I shifted to drive and floored it. The exit gate was down. I didn't slow down. The wooden barrier exploded as I crashed through it. In my rearview mirror, I saw the man standing in the parking lot, watching me escape. 10 minutes later, I pulled into a 24-hour diner parking lot. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. The pain in my shoulder turned out to be just a graze from a bullet. Small comfort. I had evidence of massive corporate fraud on my phone. Proof that Riverside had been running an illegal surveillance operation targeting everyone they did business with, including proof they'd tried to kill me to keep it quiet. But I also had no idea how deep this went. That man knew exactly when and why I'd be in the server room. Someone had warned me through impossible means. Someone who'd made the wrong choice. I pulled out my phone and called the one person I could trust. Sarah Chen, Global's head of corporate security. She answered on the first ring despite the early hour. "We need to talk," I said. "The merger is compromised. Riverside has been running a surveillance operation. They have everything: our negotiations, internal communications, strategic plans. I have proof, but someone just tried to kill me to keep it quiet." A long pause. "Are you sure about this?" "I have photos and bullet holes in my car." "Where are you?" I gave her the diner's address. "Stay there," she said. "I'm sending a team. Don't talk to anyone else, don't call anyone, and whatever you do, don't delete those photos." I hung up and slumped in my seat. In a few hours, I was supposed to be signing merger documents. Instead, I'd uncovered corporate espionage, been shot at, and probably destroyed any chance of the deal going through. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "You made the right choice." I looked around the empty parking lot, but saw only my own reflection in the diner's windows. No blurred figures, no mysterious messages. Whatever presence had warned me seemed satisfied. The merger would fail, but at least I'd exposed the truth, and stayed alive in the process. I went into the diner and ordered coffee. It was going to be a long day.